Engineering Industries Federation, SAFSA, and NUMSA have reached a 3-year wage agreement following negotiations which began in February this year. SAFSA says the wage increases will be calculated on the gazetted minimum rates of pay per grade over the next 3 years. This agreement will be in effect from July 1st this year to June 30th, 2027. Nothando Makutulela reports.
SAFSA says in year 1, Rate A, which are high earners, will receive 6%, while Rate H, comprised of low salary earners, will get 7%. In years 2 and 3 of the agreement, Rate A will receive 5% and Rate H 6% respectively. The steel sector says, apart from wage increases and an agreement being reached, the deal contains no additional or immediate costs to employment concessions.
In the Northern Cape, at least 4 electricians at Kimberley's Salt Blakey municipality have been rushed to hospital after sustaining injuries when a substation exploded. The electricians were allegedly attending to a cable fault at the substation when the explosion occurred. Municipal spokesperson Thabo Mutibi says the Labour Department is currently doing assessments at the substation.
The electricians were on call attending to a cable fault at the Hercules Street substation in Hurlia at about 9 o'clock this morning when the explosion occurred. They were rushed to hospital for immediate medical attention. A prolonged outage should be expected due to the circumstances surrounding the explosion. The Department of Labour will be conducting an assessment before the substation could be handed back to the municipality for repair work to unfold.
9 police members attached to the public order unit at Forêt outside Cape Town have been injured when a Nyala vehicle overturned on Okavango Drive near Gryfontein. Police spokesperson FC van Wyk says they are investigating a case of reckless and negligent driving. He says 2 police officers were seriously injured and were airlifted to hospital. He says the other officers were transported to nearby medical facilities for treatment. Looking at election news now, the IFP's premier candidate in KZN, Tamin Duli, and other party leaders are busy with door-to-door election campaigns in the Durban Metro and Pietermaritzburg. The IFP has traditionally been seen as a party with a rural support base. However, Nduli says in recent years, they've been able to win wards previously held by the ANC, like in Sweetwaters in Pietermaritzburg and in Umkomas, which is part of the eThekwini Metro. Nduli is campaigning in Inanda.
We want to reclaim the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Hence, we are aware that the highly populated areas is Durban and Pietermaritzburg. With them alone, if people can vote for you and you get more than 2 million votes, you can govern KwaZulu-Natal. You can have 50 plus 1 seat in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Hence, all our leaders are all over Durban and also in Pietermaritzburg to encourage people to go out and vote.
Members of the Municipal Workers Union SAMU at Rustenburg in the Northwest are currently on their 6th day of a strike for salary increases. It's reported that last week their employer, the Rustenburg municipality, promised to move them from grade 5 to 6, but the workers are demanding back pay from 2017. And an independent journalist in China who made a name for herself covering the first COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan is set to be released from prison soon. Zhang Zan served 4 years after being found guilty of picking quarrels and provoking trouble. She traveled to Wuhan at the start of the epidemic to document the government's response there to the outbreak. Recapping the top story, the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation, SAFSA, and NUMSA have reached a 3-year wage agreement following negotiations which began in February this year. For SAFM News,
coming up in your sports this hour, we hear from Steve Barker, who's mindful of congested schedule as Stellenbosch head to CAF and Free State Crinums aim to stay on top in Telkom Netball League. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more car. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Location, London. Unit, the London Serious Crime Unit. The Steering, Luther, a dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge. Every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio. SAFM, leading the conversation. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And a big thank you for connecting with us with the National Pulse now and for the next 3 hours. I mean, here's a question to you. What do you think is the National Pulse rate now? Like, do you have an idea? Think about that because, we are 16 days now to the elections, right? So I'm sure, like me, you've been flooded with messaging by parties hoping to convince you to vote for them. And that could be, from posters to SMSs to whatever, tweets, WhatsApp groups, rallies, election adverts. The big question is, are you convinced? Have you decided? So I thought about this. You know what? You have 3 voting choices. Besides those who don't vote, that's the 4th choice. But 3 voting choices. You vote for a party that you are emotionally connected to. You're the type of party that you're, like how you would support a rugby or football team. You just love them. No matter what they do, right or wrong, you just vote for them. Okay, that's easy if you are one of them, right? The other is to vote for a party whose vision impresses you most for this election. You may not be married to them like you'd marry your favorite football or rugby team, but just for now, you connected to them because you like what they're saying to you now. So think about those 2. And if not option 1 or 2, assuming you're still struggling with that, right? Then you may want to use a tactical vote. And what do I mean by that? You're not emotionally attached to the party. You don't even necessarily agree with their politics or their policies. But you do understand that there's a very good chance we could actually enter into a coalition political arrangement of this election at national level as well as at provincial level. So in that case, the tactical vote is significant. It's voting getting other parties that you may not necessarily agree with to have a seat at the table to send a message to those that are leading, the dominant 2, 1, 2 or 3 parties, okay? So I'll leave you with that for now. Think about that one. Does your tactical vote count? It absolutely does because it helps to just change the status quo. And I'm not telling you what to do, but I'll certainly think you should consider that as an option. Now, can you think of one party that no matter what, there's something about this party or their leadership that you absolutely will not vote for? There's just something about what they say and do like, no, no, no. I don't want an answer. I'm just asking you, can you think about it? And perhaps here's the last one. Can you think about a party that you haven't voted for them before, but there's just something about their vision and leadership right now. They have an X factor that really appeals to you. By the way, I don't know why parties don't use the word X factor in their voting. I mean, what a way to say, like, we have the X factor. Is there a party that stands out for you that says, hey, we have the X factor? Well, I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. The big question to you is like, well, what's your point, right? And you can share your point of view right away. You can WhatsApp us via text or voice notes, or you can call in, or you can also tag us on our social media platforms, SAFM Radio, and myself, using that hashtag, The National Pulse. So let's hear right away what you feel about that. Who's got the X factor for you? To WhatsApp, it's 0614 104 107. Otherwise, 086 000 2032.
It's been 30 years since we took our first steps towards a better life together.
We've been building homes, restoring dignity together. Millions now have access to education, water, electricity, telecommunications, and improved social security together. We are investing in jobs for our people, making sure no one is left behind. We are renewing our state institutions and turning the tide on corruption together. We are building a better Africa and a better world together.
So let's do more together. Vote ANC.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, so do you concur with my thoughts about how do you go about voting? The party you love, the party you admire just for now, or the strategic, tactical vote that will just suit an agenda for this election with no promises of another? If you have an opinion and you see an X factor in a party, then let us know. Okay, you can voice note, text right away on WhatsApp, or you can call in. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. In fact, Errol's already got a point of view, but Errol will get to your thoughts just now. Let's start with something that's very party or election related, but certainly is a cause for concern. A leading economist from South Africa, that's Dawie Ruert, who's the chief economist at the Efficient Group. He's particularly concerned about the possibilities of violence before, during, and after the elections. Why does he think what he thinks? Let's find out. Dawie, appreciate your time. You're on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So you believe that there's a possibility of violence now, before, after, and during?
Yeah, I'm very concerned. I think we're in a period of political transition in South Africa. It seems as if the ANC is going to lose its majority. That means that we're in for a coalition government in South Africa, so there will be a lot of hustle and bustle around trying to fix or putting a government together. And during that time, then I think there will clearly there's some uncertainty currently in the markets. We can see it in all sort of levels. We can see it in the exchange rate of the currency, although I think gradually the financial markets are discounting a good outcome for the elections, but you can see it in the exchange rate of the rand and the capital markets and the equity markets. What is clear is that the financial markets are concerned about the outcome, and there is always a possibility of quite a bad outcome. But I think at the moment things look a little bit better. But more to your point, I just listened to the advertisement you played just before we started talking to you. And there we've got the ANC making some claims and saying that they've done A, B, and C and so on. And those are the reasons why I am concerned. Exactly those reasons. Like, for example, we have very, very high levels of unemployment in South Africa. We've got rising levels of poverty, and we've got rising levels of absolute poverty where people go to bed hungry. And now we have this transition, the period of transition into a new kind of political dispensation in South Africa. And we have, just by the way, the president seems to be quite proud of that, but we have about 28 million people receiving a grant from the state every month. And those grants are becoming less valuable because of the effect of inflation. So people's grants are actually falling in the real value. And all those sort of things are putting pressure on a society that is very polarized. So I'm indeed very concerned about the possibility of violence.
Now, when you say violence, explain what type of violence. I mean, two people having an argument in a car park is also violence. You're not talking about that, are you?
No. I'm talking about what we saw about 2 years ago. I think the police are probably much better prepared for something like this now than 2 years ago. But let me give you one example. Lesotho, the Premier of Gauteng, for example, recently said that the day after the elections you can go to any private hospital, for example, and be treated. So imagine 100 people ends up at some private hospital somewhere and there's some sort of confrontation with the security there. That as an example. So, and there are many other examples. We see, for example, this new political party, the MK party, there's a lot of infighting there. We know that's quite a sensitive issue around Zuma. So if the infighting continues and there's some sort of disagreement, then it's quite possible that can also flare up in some kind of violence, especially in KZN or perhaps even in Gauteng. Those are the kinds of examples that I'm referring to.
Yeah, but again, specifically when you say violence, I'm just trying to say, to what length? I mean, you gave the example of what happened in Durban or KZN a few years ago. I mean, let's just talk about the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is there is violence. Now, what's the worst case scenario of violence? I mean, what level of violence are we talking about?
Well, worst case scenario of violence, I guess, there's some group of people are unhappy with the political outcome, as an example, and they decided they're going to storm one of these big shops, for example, and plundering the shops. And you know what happened 2 years ago? The whole thing spread out like wildfire all over KZN and in Gauteng especially. That's the kind of thing. We need a spark to set the whole thing in motion, and that's what I am concerned about. The sparks can happen all over the place. I gave you a couple of possibilities that can happen. What concerns me, this kind of thing can pick up momentum because of the underlying factors. And the underlying factors are high levels of unemployment and poverty. Those are the forces that's going to drive violence in the country, potentially.
Okay, but let's get clarity on this. And they're really two different issues. One is the threat of violence if political parties are unhappy with the outcome. In particular, the example you gave that there's a chance, it's not guaranteed, that the ruling party that's ruled now for 30 years may lose its majority. Is there any suggestions that we're an intolerant society when it comes to democracy? I haven't seen much of that.
No, I must tell you, I'm quite happy with democracy in South Africa. I think the Electoral Commission is doing an excellent job, and I think it's civil society that's actually maintaining democracy in South Africa. Not the political parties; it is civil society, also various levels of civil society, including the press. They are keeping democracy alive in South Africa. But I can quite easily think of a situation, like I've mentioned, where the outcome of the election is not to the satisfaction of a certain group, and that could lead to something, and it can spill over into something else. That is what I'm concerned. I'm concerned as an economist about the underlying things.
Okay, we'll talk about the underlying in a moment. I want to stay with this issue. Why do you think political parties are not upholding democracy? Some might be very, very surprised you'd be saying that.
No. That's not what I mean. I think the real guardians of democracy in South Africa are things like, for example, civil society, various civil societies, the press in South Africa, the judiciary, the churches in South Africa. They are actually keeping civil society, keeping democracy alive in South Africa. I think those institutions are crucially important for democracy in South Africa. Political parties, they are in for politics. They're in for power. That's what they do. We need other things to keep that intact, and the institutions I've mentioned are the really important ones to keep democracy alive and intact.
Okay, then you said that there's underlying factors, and you mentioned poverty and inequality, and I mean there's a whole range of issues, including grants, etc. I hear that, right? Would that cause? That means the cause of violence of the underlying causes. Would that be served better by, or would that be fueled rather by the regime change? That means either a new government or a coalition government, which is still new, right? Or would it actually be lessened if the incumbents hold on to power?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what can potentially cause anything like this. Like I've said, but I am concerned about the underlying things, and it can be started by anything else. I think the question that you're asking me, will the ANC go if they lose, for example? I think they will try to find excuses. Certainly, all political parties always try to find excuses, and there's any reason for them to, if there's any suggestion or anything about some voter fraud or anything like that, I'm pretty sure they will put up a huge fight. Anybody will put up a huge fight in that. And will they accept that in the end? So far, the democracy in South Africa has been working very well. And I think we should all be very pleased with the way that democracy is working in South Africa. But when there's a power change happening, when things are changing, then political parties can and might start making certain suggestions, whether it's true or not.
But here's the last thing in a minute, right? So let's say there's change, as seems likely, only because that's what the polls are suggesting, okay?
Yeah.
If there's change, the underlying issues in our society, the issues of poverty and inequality and mass unemployment, those things will not change in one day, right? They won't. We know that, right? Why would the change of leadership at government level then spark off unrest in one day when clearly people are far more patient than one day?
Because, just imagine, we've got a lot of politicians in the various political parties. They've got very cushy jobs. They've got very nice income. They are very powerful people, and they can potentially lose their jobs. And if the institutions in South Africa are not strong enough, and I think they are, broadly speaking, strong enough, but if the institutions are not strong enough, then those politicians, knowing that they're going to lose these cushy jobs, can come with some sort of excuse why the outcome of the election is not the right one.
All right, I sincerely hope you're absolutely 100% wrong. And you get my point.
I also hope so. I certainly do hope so.
Davy Rood, thanks for your time. Chief Economist at the Efficient Group. What do you make of the comments of Davy Rood? I'm sure you have an opinion on it. You can call or WhatsApp right away. I'll take those calls as soon as I can. Also, what do you make about this point of just how strong is our democracy? We'll certainly get another take on this issue later on in the show, so do not miss out on that, right? I'll pick up many of the comments on my initial point about how you intend voting. We'll do that as soon as possible.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Catch the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday at 7 on SABC2. This week, it's all about mastering the mighty Swiss roll. To make things even more challenging, contestants must work together and present both a savory and sweet offering of this classic bake. Who will roll on to the next round of the competition? Find out on the Tastemaster SA. Tuesday evenings at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Durban is yet again ready to welcome thousands of delegates and buyers who will be attending the Africa Travel Indaba at the Durban ICC from 13th to 16th May. The Indaba, that attracts delegates from across the globe, is the continent's leading travel showpiece. Hosting events of this magnitude continues to position Durban as a business and holiday destination of choice. Durban Tourism, together with community tourism organizations and local businesses, are eager to showcase that indeed Durban has more to offer. Durban is on the move. Join us at stand DEC 1G50. Durban is Africa's leading festival and event destination according to the World Travel Awards 2023.
I asked the question, which party has the X factor? Your comments are there. We'll pick it up in a moment. Now, in the meantime, Smangalisa Mkhatshwa was jailed, tortured and banned by the apartheid government. But he went on to be a deputy minister and a mayor. In 1994, he spoke passionately about the role of ordinary citizens in shaping the future by voting. And 30 years later, well, that hasn't changed. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Mkhatshwa's struggle by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote. Hashtag Remember Me.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, what do you think is the national pulse rate right now? So give me a number. Maybe we can have a scoreboard on that every single day. But comments about my initial, that's my point opener. Here it is.
Ashraf, there's nobody with the X factor in this country for me. These politicians all say the same thing. Since 1994, we got promises, promises, and promises. And ain't nobody showing anything better. Gavin from Richards Bay.
Gavin says nobody with the X factor. Here's another.
I feel that most public employees have been raised in government. I mean, they started there at a very young age as interns, studied within the department, worked their way up. So they've never had exposure to the private sector, where I think you can learn quite a number of ethics when it comes to serving the public. It's something government should consider. If you study public management, it actually frowns upon that very thing and actually mentions the cons of employing people from the private sector. And if you read that segment, you'll actually find that it's contradictory. So yeah, people from the private sector are much easier to get into a system, an efficient system, not the current system.
All right. Then as for the comments, Ashraf Garda is talking about violence after the elections, but he's unable to support his statement, and that is dangerous. And he must stay on the economic path and leave politics alone. And the ANC and other black parties are not criminals. We can't allow such utterances in the public radio. TG, well, listen, he's a public figure with an opinion, and he's put forward his thoughts, and I've asked him questions, and I think you could glean from what I asked him whether he was convincing enough. Let's get, we should be chatting to Naim Jina about Egypt joining in with South Africa in the lawsuit against the ICJ. But before we get to that, let's get further thoughts on the initial point I made about, my point and your point. So what's your point? Joey in the Northwest, hi.
I'm doing fine. It's Joey Mabi from the Northwest in Mahikeng.
Good to connect with you, Joey. Go ahead, yeah?
Thank you, Monet.
Yes, you are. You're live on the air.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having me. My name is Joey Mabi from the Northwest. About my vote, Ashraf, Northwest Mahikeng is my hometown. I grew up here. I went to school here. It was the time of Buputaswana, There was no crime, Ashraf. The crime was very much low. There were police barracks all over in the villages here. Today, Ashraf, where we are sitting, we're even afraid when we're going to sleep in villages because of crime. The party that I'm going to go with is a party that is believing its policies are based on the right of law. The borders are porous. I believe in the party that closes the borders.
So have you got a party? Do you want to mention a party?
Without any nepotism or favoritism, which is Action SA in the Northwest.
So
I think we need to give that party a chance because they have never been in government in the Northwest in municipalities, but you can see what they are doing in metros in Tshwane.
All right, got that. I had a chat with Herman Mashaba 2 days ago, around Thursday, in fact. I hope you listened to that podcast. If you haven't listened to it again now, you'll find it on all the social media streams, including on the SFM radio, podcast channel. So check it out. Thanks for that call, Joey. Let's get another opinion. Owen is in George. Hi, Owen.
Hi, Ashraf. Nice to hear you again.
Much appreciated, Owen. Go for it, yeah.
I'm going to vote for, not for one party, I will vote for two.
Okay.
Two parties.
All right.
I'm even thinking of a third, maybe an independent.
All right.
On national, I might make my vote, both my votes for a party. Right. And on the provincial level, I will vote for another party.
Okay, that suggests that you're not, as I mentioned in my intro with that's my point, you're not married to the party like you would be like a football or rugby lover. You're not committed to one.
I haven't voted for that party for a few years.
Okay, so you're being tactical.
My biggest fear is that I fear of a coalition. As I look at other countries in former years like Greece and Turkey, how the instability and the economy, the effects on the economy. So I think it could have a major blow to South Africa's economy if we have an unstable government.
Okay.
Especially if it's a coalition government.
All right.
So
well, yeah.
Rather stick with the devil you know than the one you don't know.
Okay. The problem is, how long do you stick with the devil? That's my point. Thanks for that call, Owen. Nice call indeed from you. Let's get another one. But here's the thought, right? Yes, I think coalitions bring instability, but I also buy the line that many politicians suggest. Coalitions are the price we pay for all the parties not being able to convince the majority, the electorate, to give them a 50+1 vote. Because of that, they're forced to argue with each other. Like think about you're having lunch together and you don't know which restaurant to go to, and they have to come up with a solution that will stick. Otherwise, if they don't, they'll all go home hungry. So they have to make a plan. Shorty, your thoughts? Hi, Shorty.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon, Shorty. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, man. I want to condemn the invitation of ZANU-PF by the ruling party, the ANC, to come and observe the election here, because we know the history of ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, and then it should not be the political leaders or political parties that must condemn such a thing, because as a voter, as a South African citizen, I'm concerned about this issue. I think I should raise that. I'm not happy with the way Cyril Ramaphosa is trying to come with a way of manipulating the election, because once is acknowledging the ZANU-PF, inviting the ZANU-PF here to observe the election when they were against the GA when they arrived to the USA.
All right, so got that. ZANU-PF not happy with it. In fact, many people are unhappy with it. What do you make of the whole ZANU-PF coming in and being invited to be observers by the ANC and that sort of coziness that appears to be playing out? Okay, any opinion on that if you have? While you think about all of that, let's get the news headlines. And I think it's Madupi. I'll double check. Yes, he certainly is heading up the news desk as always. 3:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the NPA says the partner of the late Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Mokgoro could face an additional charge of culpable homicide following her death. The Steel and Engineering Industries Federation, SAFSA, and NUMSA have reached a 3-year wage agreement following negotiations which began in February this year. And labor unions in Nigeria have begun a nationwide protest against the withdrawal of subsidies that lowered the price of electricity. I'll be back with all the details at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Joburg, now if you're airport bound coming from Pretoria on the R21, there's 2 sets of roadworks today. The first one is you come down to Clayville, and then there's a second set just down towards the Bopsfontein exit. So you've got 2 queues, one approaching Olifantsfontein and one after by the Engen garage. The N3 South looks like something's just happened around Marlborough Drive, coming off the Clue interchange. Traffic is backlogging pretty heavily. That's if you're trying to get through to the Edenvale side. Stationary truck just south of Ashburton on the N3. That is Durban bound. That's a queue almost back towards the Market Road exit. That is looking pretty heavy. A little bit happening in the Eastern Cape today. There's a truck that's overturned at the Hamburg Cuttings outside East London on the R72. That's being described as a pretty horrific accident, and traffic delays are building pretty quickly in both ways. Also, the N2 between Makanda and Fish River Pass closed until 5 p.m. It may open a little bit earlier. Contractors doing some blasting there today, so you'll be diverted off that N2 and rerouted along the R72. And Cape Town, a burning vehicle a little bit earlier on the N2 inbound by Spine Road at Khayelitsha. The road was closed, and there is a backlog as far as Baden-Powell Drive. I understand just the left shoulder closed now, but there is a backlog to process through Baden-Powell Drive coming into Khayelitsha along the N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
The other day I remember you saying you really rate Stelly as well.
I do.
Yeah, tell me more about them.
I do. They're now in CAF, not CAF Champions League, but they are in the CAF Interclub next season. And Stellenbosch head coach Steve Barker says that he's mindful of what will be a congested schedule. Now, Stellies will need more players, especially with more fixtures added to their calendar for the 2024-25 campaign. And Barker admits additions are necessary for the squad. They will play in the CAF Champions League if they hold on to second place, but Barker says the CAF Confederations Cup will still be a good consolation prize should they drop to third with 2 games to go.
If you'd have told me at the beginning of the season you would have been in every single semi-final that the league offered and won a trophy and finished third in the league, I would have probably not believed you. So yeah, regardless of whether we finish second or third, it will be a really fantastic season for us. I forgot to mention that we also basically played in every single match this season that has to offer except the final of the MTN and now the final of the Nedbank. So by the time the league ends, we would have played 41 league matches.
In women's football, Mamelodi Sundowns ladies head coach Jerry Shabalala says that an opportunity is on the table to learn different styles of play when they head to USA to play in the Women's Cup. Sundowns ladies are the first African side to be invited to the prestigious tournament, which is in its third year. They will play against the likes of Kansas City Current, that plays in the National Women's Soccer League, and Vissel Kobe in the J1 League in Japan, and also the likes of Atletico Madrid in Spain.
It's exciting, when I heard about it, and I look at the teams that we are going to compete up against. We've got team from Asia, we've got team from Europe, we also got team from North America, and we are coming in as Africans. It's a good opportunity for us to go out there and test ourselves and see in terms of how far are we in terms of football in club level. We've seen our national team, but competing against those other continents, and we've seen how they fare. It's an opportunity for us to go out there and showcase our talent, and to also learn, from other diversity cultures, how and tactics from different teams, especially teams from Asia, teams from North America. So we could learn maybe one or two things, because the European teams, we always see them on TV, we watch them, and we understand how they play.
Elsewhere, Mikel Arteta says that Arsenal are already history makers, even if they are unable to claim the Premier League title from Manchester City. The Gunners won. Their win from yesterday over Manchester United was 27th league win of the season, which is an Arsenal record in a 38-game league season, surpassing the Invisibles of 2003-2004, who won 26 league matches. Now they wait for Manchester City, who will play Tottenham Hotspur tomorrow. A game that Pep Guardiola says that should they lose that game, it means that they're definitely not winning the league. Then in tennis, Naomi Osaka crashed out of the Rope Open with a 6-2, 6-3 loss to 7th seed Qin Cheng. Osaka was playing at the Foro Italico for the first time in 3 years after taking a break from the tour to have her first child, and is ranked at 173rd in the world. In netball, Free State Crinum's coach Martha Muswatle says that they want to maintain their lead through the second half of the Telkom Netball League. Crinums have leapfrogged defending champions Gauteng Jaguars to top spot in Division A after collecting 11 points with 5 wins from 6 matches. And Muswatle says that the aim is to collect maximum points consistently in opening fixtures in the second half of their campaign to order to remain at the summit.
We just want to keep it simple and straightforward, and that is taking it game by game and making sure that we take 2 points after every game. So in short, just taking every game as it comes and winning it, so we remain top of the log. Even though we know it's not going to be easy in the top 4, but it gives you that emotional stability and just the mental power if you are number 1. So the plan is to remain number 1.
In our Women in Sports focus, Springbok woman captain Nolisindi Soboi says that the team qualifying for the Rugby World Cup bodes well for those who want to see women's rugby grow in the country. The Bok women not only qualified for the Rugby World Cup and defended their African title, but also sealed an entry into the WXV2 competition, which will see SA, USA, Scotland, Japan and Samoa play each other in the tournament.
Qualifying for us, it was a massive thing because we can see that the growth in our team, and we are grateful for the opportunity of coming out from South Africa and to Madagascar to represent our team, to learn new experience and all of that. And we're also grateful with the fact that we are becoming a better team, and being a part of the team that is going to play in the World Cup. It's one of beautiful things that each and every girl or each and every team that will wish for. So it's something huge for us as a team.
So a big congratulations to the Boks women for, doing better than they have, and also the fact that they're African champions.
That's excellent, yeah. And maybe not unsurprising,
yeah,
because we are the dominant rugby nation. Can I ask you quickly, we'll talk about Man City later on.
Yes.
Just on Stellies, why have they done so well? I mean, that's the heart of rugby, that's rugby land.
Stellenbosch?
Yeah.
In terms of what? Football?
Yeah, why have they done so well in
I
football?
mean, you know what? The structures that they have in place in terms of from the development level moving up, it is exceptional. it's literally exceptional. And what they do in football, in rugby, in hockey, it's all the same. So I think for them now, football is coming on board in terms of doing well right now. But the setups that they have in terms of their development structures, it has been on point.
Else. I mean, here's the thought. Who would have thought 10 years ago we'd be talking about, maybe the second best team in South African football called Stellenbosch? Isn't that fascinating?
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what they're going to do next season. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport. Ke nna Dume Nkgapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Brent Carlson, what are you busy with these days? And does football still play a part in your life?
Yes, Michael, football is always going to be a part of my life. I'm quite busy. I'm still in the professional sector, helping the current players with not only in the South African Football Players Unit. And then I also do a lot of grassroots and development. My company, Kamaya Sports.
What do you feel about the state of South African football at the moment?
I think the one thing we're lacking is putting bums on the seats. So people stadiums, watching the game. I think that's where we're lacking a bit. And the players obviously need that support. So I think that's one area we can try and improve, the clubs and the league overall.
Top Sport on SAFM. Call us on 086 000 2032. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So many people have a view on the X Factor political party or the not so X Factor political party. Keep it going in terms of how you're coming up to make your choices, because I'm certainly emphasizing the point about being strategic around it if you don't have a party that you just absolutely love, right? Let's talk about issues around Pop Crew now. We have with us Richard Mamabolo, who's the Pop Crew spokesperson, and we're talking to them because Pop Crew is calling for the removal of the SAPS Divisional Commander for Human Resources. That's Lieutenant General Bongiwe Zulu. Let's find out more about it. Richard, appreciate your time. You're on the National Pulse. Hello.
Good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Thank you. Right. Tell us about your call and why.
Yes, our call comes on the basis of the complaints we've been receiving from different members from different colleges that did training when the new recruiting to the SAPS. And some of them have obviously been due to the fact that there have been concerns about her management style. And in certain cases, there have been complaints about sexual harassment and other forms of misconduct, which have been ignored. In fact, what we pick up is that some managers, when they raise complaints, they end up being suspended. And this has obviously led to conditions wherein there's no conducive engagement with regards to the different levels of management within those colleges. That has got an impact on the kind of training that goes into recruiting new members. And we feel that the commissioner has not been adhering to the calls that we've been making, because we have engaged with the national commissioner about the matter, and yet there doesn't seem to be any positive change in this regard.
And, considering the person we're referring to is heading up the colleges, right, the police colleges, I mean, that's quite significant. What has happened in terms of official investigation as opposed to your removal call?
We have requested the national commissioner to look into investigating all these allegations, and up to so far there has not been any outcome thereof. But at the same time, you still have more complaints coming. Remember that the SAPS went on an aggressive recruitment campaign since COVID-19, where on a year-to-year basis, they've been recruiting around 10,000 new recruits into the SAPS. So these complaints have been coming out in large numbers for the past 3 years, and up to so far, there has not been any form of consequence management that has been undertaken. And yet, on a year-to-year basis, we receive a lot of complaints about sexual harassment, and sometimes even the perpetrators are not even being charged. So we feel that she has not necessarily been doing the best to ensure the safety of new recruits as
Okay, lastly, don't you think we're being preemptive if there's been no official conclusion to any investigations and already you're calling for a dismissal? I mean, how does one do that?
Well, we feel that it's taken too long to actually come to a conclusion, but at the same time, we cannot just wait for the investigations to be concluded, because I think the fact that we receive complaints on a regular basis is quite significant for us. So we're hopeful that the National Commissioner will actually act on the matter, and the failure to do so will keep pressurizing them to actually look into her conduct, because the complaints are coming in from different fields.
Well, there's nothing stronger than the word called pressure. Richard Mamabolo, thanks for your time. Spokesperson for Pop Crew, which then begs to ask the question, what's your thought of the national pulse rate right now? You can tell me. We'll get so many of the calls of people wanting to talk, but you may just find that pulse rate even rising further when we consider the next conversation, which is about political funding or funding of political parties, and understand that not all the parties have sort of come through and been very transparent about that. We'll do that in a moment.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So I'm rather confused about this. I mean, I would have thought that, with regard to political parties, you now have to comply with that Political Parties Funding Act. You have to reveal exactly where your money's come from, anything above 100,000 rands, and no individual or company or anybody can give you more than 15 million. So I understand. But there's some issues that Professor Andrew Duvenage wants to bring up. He's the political analyst based at Northwest University. Prof. Duvenage, good chatting to you as always. You're live on the National Pulse.
Ashwar, nice talking to you. Ready to talk to you, sir.
Thank you. Right. What are you suggesting here regarding party political funding and transparency or lack of transparency?
This is a relative new legislation that came through a few years back, and it seems to have implicated in a very radical way on political parties. And my own assessment, by driving through the country, through Gauteng, driving down to places like Mossel Bay and a few others, the visibility of certain parties are extremely low. And there I'm referring to parties like the ANC, like the EFF. In fact, the ANC, towards the end of last year, was close to be liquidated as a political party. The point I like to make is that funding seems to be a key issue. And the whole problematics of funders, especially funders from the outside, seems to be an extreme problem. And now we had in social media the scenario where people believed that lots of money from specifically Russia and Iran is entering South Africa and is to the benefit of respectively both the ANC and the MK party.
Well, I mean, look, there's two parts. There's two parts. That one is, who funds a party and their level of influence in a party, something we've chatted about often. And I'll park that aside at the moment. But in terms of legislation at this point in time, because I don't think there's any law that prevents a funder influencing a party, however naive that may well be for the recipient, right? The first part is, have all the parties complied and revealed their sources of funding?
No, and that is where the international funding is even becoming more problematic. Okay. Even if it's going to internal funding, you need to get anything above 100,000. You need to declare. But when it comes to outside funding, it's even more problematic. It can end to the level of sabotage. And what we are seeing at the moment is that certain parties were identified by the IEC, and these parties didn't qualify in any way. They didn't being open, transparent about who did support them financially. And the problem is that they may get some penalties. But in a way, it is problematic. Let's say you receive 100 million for your election, but you will pay a penalty of 50,000 rand. Well, then the legislation is not going to work. In that sense, problematic.
Well, here's the question then, is there a deadline for the parties to reveal their funders?
Yes, there are deadlines. They are supposed to make open it on a regular basis. And they cannot withhold this information. And according to my understanding, the IEC needs to report this to Parliament. So in that sense, it is extremely problematic. And the oversight function is supposed to be Parliament itself. But now we know who has the majorities over there, and in that sense, it is possible to manipulate certain processes.
Okay,
that is where it becomes problematic.
All right, here's a quick thought. Besides being fined, and maybe you can answer this in one go, what sort of fine are we talking about? But here's the more important one. Why would a party that has not revealed its sources now with the current legislation under the Funding Act not be barred from contesting an election?
Well, that is the open question. What is the reaction going to be? And my take on it is at the moment, there's strong legislation. But the penalties, and I'm not sure what is the precise penalty, but the penalty is a relative low penalty in comparison to the Act. And that is what is making it problematic. It is like some of the penalties when it comes to B and black economic empowerment. Some companies say it's better to pay the penalty rather to comply to the law.
Okay.
And I believe in this case, it is more or less similar.
All right, you've got 30 seconds. At this point in time, which parties do you, by your knowledge, have not complied?
Well, I have just seen a list, very briefly. I can't remember all of them, but I think the ANC is one of them, and I think the EFF is also within that category. But there are other smaller parties also implicated. So I've seen the list, but can't remember all 6 or 7 parties implicated in this process.
All right, we need to get that list and make absolutely sure about exactly who's complied, who hasn't complied. What is the legislation in terms of penalties? Is it money? Can you be barred from contesting an election? Maybe the IEC. I'm not too sure who needs to be talking about this, but we need to find out even further about that. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated, Prof. Dumenachem. Got us thinking. Absolutely. And now, my pulses are racing now. Why wouldn't it? If they haven't complied with that. We'll get an update. In fact, I'll take some of your calls as well, and an update on the Senzo Mewiwa trial. We'll get that as well coming up as well shortly. But certainly looking at some of your WhatsApps, and do also you can use that hashtag The National Pulse.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Stellies gets it that they can never catch Masandawana, but they want to secure the second position. Meanwhile, Kabuyelo loves it on the summit and want to grab 3 points to extend their lead. This is the DSTV Premiership. Witness the unmatched passion of Mzansi's beautiful game. Stellenbosch FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC on Saturday, 18 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
When you see a teacher, maybe one of your members, being assaulted like this, how do you think situations like this are developing in our schools?
Look, we remain concerned about this, and we're seeing it spreading throughout the country, to a point that on a few occasions that we have addressed our members in the recent past, we have heard them getting very, very scared to get to school because they are expecting or anything to happen, or especially with the kind of laws that we're having in the country that seem to be protecting the learners more than our teachers. That makes it even more difficult for them to be able to manage these situations at school. So as a union, we remain very, very concerned about this situation.
Thank you very much indeed. And Kasana Delopi, Deputy General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, so we are going to chat to Pearl Magubane just shortly. In fact, we can do that on the X Factor.
Hello, SAFM. While his country, it's messed up. So I'll vote for a party that says South African must vote, foreigners must go vote for their parties at their own countries. Let them sort out their problem at their countries, and we'll sort out our problem here in our countries. Thank you. Choki from Craddock.
Thank you. Nice call in terms of getting us thinking. But here's my point. I don't think if you're a foreign national and you're not a naturalized South African citizen, you can't vote. So which foreigner can vote if they're not South African in that sense? Here's another.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Vincent Ristomati here in Bloemfontein. For me, political organizations are the same. Most of them come from the same organizations. They were leaders in one organization or another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. To the listeners, I'm just starting to hear your line, but I hope I'm audible on your side.
Okay, you're audible now. Okay, go ahead. I mean, in terms of the happenings today.
Well, today, after a 2-week break, we were expecting to hear from State Witness Gideon Host, who's a cell phone analyst. However, he's not available this week, only from Wednesday. The state went on to go through banking transactions that Muzisibia, accused number 1, had made. Well, this is because Muzisibia had claimed that he was not in Gauteng during the 2014 period when Mayua was shot and killed, and was in KZN from 2013 and only returned in 2015. However, the bank transactions prove otherwise. A couple of transactions were read where withdrawals were made around the Vosloorus area, and most of the transactions were in Gauteng and not in KZN as he had claimed.
All right. Now, I understand that the case is adjourned till Wednesday, so tomorrow's a day off, right? Or 2 days. Yeah, 1 day off in between, right? Anything else you'd like to just highlight?
Well, I must say that for once, the defense was not in opposition of this evidence. They did not challenge it at all, and it has been admitted into the record. And all we need to hear from now is the cell phone analyst who allegedly said that these accused were in communication with each other. So he's just going to come and elaborate on the findings on how they were able to get to the conclusion that the accused were in communication with each other.
Okay, shall we leave it at that? Unless you want to bring up something else too.
No, that's all for
right,
today.
Perfect. We'll chat on Wednesday. Have a day off if that's what you're going to get. Pearl Magubane, SABC News reporter. By the way, lots of thoughts on the conversations I've had with Dawie Rood as well as with Prof. Andre Duvenage. Here's another.
Ashraf, I think it's a little bit far-fetched of Dawie Rood to come and he's got no intelligence gathered about what may or may not happen. It's all speculation based on nothing but personal fear and talk amongst people who are fearful. There's absolutely no fact to what he says. DW in Cape Town.
I tell you what, if you heard the interview, I think you'd probably get a sense that I'm with you on this one here. I think there's a lack of facts. There's a lot of opinion which comes through, and there's not facts that sort of underpin it, and it's a cause for concern. But what we'll do is, that's one opinion, and you voiced it. We'll get another opinion after 5 o'clock. So listen out for that in terms of, is there really a case to be concerned about instability before, during, and after South Africa's 2024 election? In terms of other callers, as soon as we can, it's a balancing act. I just want to tell you, between speaking to guests, doing a lot of crossings, and engaging with you, and we absolutely want to engage with you, particularly if you're a first-time caller. I certainly want to do that again. So it's never easy. We'll hopefully get to Chris and Errol and Modifa as well as soon as we can. Right now it's 4 o'clock, heading up the news desk. Modupi, as always.
you very much, Ashraf. The top story is Sawa, the late Mokhoro's partner, could face additional charges and the George death toll rises. Very good afternoon. The NPA says the partner of the late Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Mokhoro could face an additional charge of culpable homicide following her death. The partner was the driver during a car crash which left Mokhoro with several injuries last year. She was hospitalized following the crash in Warrenton near Kimberley, and the partner was charged with reckless and negligent driving. Justice Mokhoro passed away last week. Provincial NPA spokesperson Mojalefa Senokwatsane says David Melesi is currently out on a warning.
He is criminally charged and facing one count of reckless and negligent driving. There is a possibility of amending charges to culpable homicide following the death of the judge. The accused will be back in court on the 30th of May in the Bartley West Magistrate Court. He appeared on a J175 and is currently on warning.
The death toll from a partially collapsed building at George in the Western Cape last Monday has risen to 27. George Municipal spokesperson Ntobeko Mangwengwe says there are still 26 workers trapped under the rubble. He says 13 workers are currently being treated in hospital. Mangwengwe says rescue efforts are continuing.
The project is going slow because we must be absolutely sure that there's no one that we can damage the body any further. That's why we are very, very cautious what we are doing, but we do our utmost to get to the point where we get more bodies and we can get them out to their family.
The Steel and Engineering Industries Federation, SAFSA and NUMSA have reached a 3-year wage agreement following negotiations which began in February this year. SAFSA says the wage increases will be calculated on the gazetted minimum rates of pay per grade over the next 3 years. This agreement will be in effect from July the 1st this year. Notando Makutulela reports.
SAFSA says in year 1, Rate A, which are high earners, will receive 6%, while Rate H, comprised of low salary earners, will get 7%. In years 2 and 3 of the agreement, Rate A will receive 5% and Rate H 6% respectively. The steel sector says, apart from wage increases and an agreement being reached, the deal contains no additional or immediate costs to employment concessions.
Looking at election news now, some international Muslim scholars and leaders from the US, Europe and East Africa have called on South Africans of the Muslim faith to help return the ANC to power in the May 29 polls. The delegation of Muslim leaders has met with ANC leaders, including Party President Cyril Ramaphosa, at Luthuli House in Joburg. The president of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, also representing the European Muslim Council, Dr. Ibrahim El Zayat.
Our visit is also including a good advice to the Muslim community of South Africa, because this year will be a year where 64 relevant elections will take place, and many of them will have a direct impact on the fate of the Palestinian people and the situation in Gaza. And so we call the Muslim community of South Africa to make sure that the ruling party stays in power and to ensure that all the gains that have been given are not lost.
And labor unions in Nigeria have begun a nationwide protest against the withdrawal of subsidies that lowered the price of electricity. Prices for some customers have risen by 240% following the latest measure to cut government spending introduced by President Bola Tinubu. The Nigerian Labour Congress says the hike is unaffordable. Its members have begun picketing at the offices of the Nigerian Electricity Regulator and the regional distribution companies. Recapping the top story, the Sawa, the NPA says the partner of the late Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Mokhoro could face an additional charge of culpable homicide following her death. For SAFM News, ke Modupi Makgalemele.
And coming up in your sports this hour, All Blacks captain Kane to quit Test rugby at the end of the season, and Cricket West Indies unveil action-packed home fixtures for men's team. More details at 4:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
With some delays leaving Pretoria on the N14, the Ben Scuman Highway. Quite a big crash there, and a big delay coming from Eupheus down towards the Trickard Snake Valley off-ramp. So coming out of Pretoria direction, Centurion, if you like. That's the delay. Crash on the N3 South just past Marlborough Drive. All lanes are open, but it is slow. And if you're leaving Joburg, collision near Maritzburg Street. So coming through from the central Joburg area on your way out towards Benrose in Denver. There's quite a backlog there as well. Durban bound, leaving Pietermaritzburg, stationary truck right at the Ashburton exit. That's pushing traffic now back as far as Market Road. The N3 coming out of Durban is heavy today from right about Felix Clamini out towards Sherwood and on towards the Spaghetti Junction. That's a really big backlog of traffic. Saw it late last week, seen again today. In Cape Town, a vehicle fire on the N2 inbound between Baden-Powell and Spine Road is still there, but all lanes are open. The fire is out and the big backlog has made its way through. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I asked the question earlier on whether you've identified a political party with an X factor. If you want to see that whole "That's My Point" feature, you'll find it in our live stream, and we'll post the video as well later on today. In fact, right? But here's the point: if you enjoy a party and you support them totally because you just love them, that's end of discussion. That's who you're going to vote for. If you're unsure about it, will you be strategic about it? And would you be looking for the X factor? And what is that X factor that will determine who gets your vote for this election? Not for the next one and not for the other. You're just giving them one. And I'd like to get your thoughts on whether any party has come up with an X factor that's got you thinking, wow, they're going to get my vote for now. Now, the other X factor we're having right now is the fact that we are 16 days to the elections. We're 47 days without load shedding. Goodness, man. What sort of a world are we living in? How do we get used to this? Are we coping? And now there's been so much speculation about what happens next, isn't it? Like it just cannot be. Everybody's talking about the 1st of June or 30th of May, right? Let's get some further thoughts on this issue, because Eskom has made the point that their Eskom energy availability factor has breached the 70% mark. That's according to the Minister of Electricity, Josiento Ramakgopa. Now, how significant is that? What does that really mean? Let's get the thoughts of Tsepo Khadima, who's an energy analyst. Tsepo, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, greetings to you as well as to the listeners on SAFM.
Much appreciated. So firstly, what do you make about, well, first of all, 47 days? Let's start with that. 47 days without load shedding, how believable is that?
Well, it is believable because the electric switch in our house is by far the best reliable indicator. So, therefore, we ought to believe it. The question becomes, how did we arrive at this nirvana? How did we arrive at this utopia moment?
Okay, so and before you answer that, there's two schools of thought, right? One would be the official position, which is the Eskom energy availability factor. The other is like, hey, we have an election coming up in 16 days' time.
Yeah, it was not by design that we would arrive at this in terms of timing with regard to the elections. But unsurprisingly, the politicians, of course, will want to make take full advantage of this era whereby now load shedding appears to be a thing of the past, to attribute it to their own doing. And I can assure you and the listeners that the load shedding having been a thing of the past is not as a result of the effective implementation of the so-called the Energy Action Plan. That's not which is done by a structure called NECOM. Mm-hmm. But if anything, it just only proves and vindicates the point that people like myself have made over a long period of time. One point being that there is no such thing as an old power station that must be retired, a coal-fired power station, that language is not technical. There's no one else in the world who was using that language except us. Secondly, that load shedding could be stopped within a period of 90 days. I've made this point over the years to say load shedding could be stopped within a period of 90 days. And I think we are now at that point. However, at the same time, I also warned that for as long as Eskom had this belief that they are in an inelastic price in terms of the consumer, what the consumer can actually pay, they were making a fundamental mistake. So what happened is that in the last 5 to 6 years, Eskom has aggressively priced itself out of the competitiveness scales. And I've warned consistently over time that increasing electricity tariffs was going to accelerate the pace of customer migration, what I would term the exodus, the great exodus of our modern day. So we see now that in the last 7 years, electricity demand has declined by a factor of 24.2%. That is 8,000 megawatts of demand that traditionally and ordinarily would have been met by Eskom. It has disappeared and it has gone off grid. And that exodus, that customer migration is going to continue unabated because at 4.54 cents, including VAT for a normal consumer, as the bare minimum, others are paying well over 6.50 cents a kilowatt hour. It simply means that customers are going to seek alternatives, and those alternatives come in below 2 rand. Even if they were to come in at 3 rand, the fact is that Eskom is now so expensive that even energy-intensive user industries are not going to be looking at Eskom for supply.
Okay, so one is that point, alternative forms of energy options that we have, right, as consumers, and we've seen that already. That's significant. How much of it has been around Eskom's good management in the last 6 months or so?
Well, the trajectory is good in as far as having reduced what they call the unplanned capacity loss factor, in terms of reducing it from just over 14,000 megawatts to now just over 10,000 megawatts. But at least there's been a 4,000 megawatt gain over there. At the same time, we know that leading into the winter period, they have slightly reduced the number of units that are on planned maintenance in order to create that buffer. So, and with additional units from both Kusile and Medupi coming on stream, and later this year the Kubek unit, which is nuclear fired, coming on stream, those should really be able to make a difference. However, I want to underscore the following point: that by and large, it is irresistible for politicians to then take advantage and start to claim what does not belong to them. If Eskom indeed was at 70.78%, as today the minister told us, they would have had to immediately switch off diesel generators, the so-called OCGTs. They would have had to not use the pumped storage, because diesel generators come in at a cost of around 9 rand a kilowatt hour to produce electricity. The pumped storage costs 40%, which means that for every 10 megawatts of power you produce from the pump storage, you must spend 4 megawatts to produce that 10 megawatts. And then also Eskom would have had to switch off the, in any case, redundant 100% useless renewables, because in any case they make no difference in terms of supply, except that they come in at a cost that Eskom cannot afford. So therefore the 70.78%, we must really be circumspect. We must be skeptical about it, because ordinarily I would have thought that then the minister would have proceeded to tell us how much of the excess power that Eskom now has is able to export to our neighbors who, in fact, are going through greater trouble. Zimbabwe and Zambia, because the El Nino effect, which has affected the water flows on the Zambezi River, means that the Kariba Dam this year will not be able to give electricity to those countries,
Right.
but we're not exporting.
Okay, now you're saying we must be skeptical about the minister's claim that Eskom have breached the 70% mark. Now, if we're following your point that we must be skeptical, then why don't we call him out as what you may suggest he is, which is lying?
I'm suggesting that they are not 100% truthful with the facts.
Okay. Right. So now, what would the implications then be if we find that he is not 100% truthful, or my words, that he's lying?
No, there's going to be no consequence on him. And depending on what happens on May 29th and what sort of a government configuration you'll have. I mean, I'm on record for over a period of time. I think since his appointment, I've said that the appointment of the Minister of Electricity is certainly unwarranted.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no justification for that portfolio, but that Eskom was supposed to appoint the right management. Now, the problem that I think I'm seeing with Eskom is the following. If indeed they believed that they have turned the corner, if indeed they believe that they can reach the 75% energy availability factor out of the 48,000 megawatts of installed capacity that they have, one of the things that they would desist from talking about would have been to build 14,000 kilometers of a transmission grid, because this country does not need 1 kilometer of expansion of the transmission grid at all, but they are still talking about that. Secondly, the minister would not have been talking about calling for bids. I think it's bid window 6 or bid window 7, whereby he's calling on for more intermittent power to be put on the grid. And if anything, Eskom should by now, if they believed what they say, and indeed they were confident, they should have already taken action to renegotiate and terminate or cancel most, if not all, of the renewable energy contracts, because that power is useless.
Okay.
And secondly, they would have had to renegotiate their coal purchases. I mean, I'm on record as having said that all of this cost Eskom in excess of 80 billion rand a year, and I don't hear them speaking about on how now they are going to tackle that excess expenditure
Because that will
of 80 billion rand a year.
that would reduce their costs, and then that will be the prudent thing to do. Now, we also know there's been lots of conversations about burning diesel. I see the leader of Build One SA, Musi Maimane, the latest politician, saying the same thing. So, whereas on the one hand you're getting people taking credit, political parties taking credit for Eskom's position, you're also getting opposition taking credit for some degrees of cynicism around this issue and being skeptical about many issues. So that's what he said. However, the Eskom chairperson, Mteto Niati, he dismissed any speculation about the issues of load shedding being linked to the government elections. And I'm quoting him. He says, none of us, in terms of linking that to the election, right? None of us, because we are professionals, would be part of any ploy to do anything like that. Now, this is a person who's taken over fairly recently. I think he's had a stellar record at Microsoft, MTN, Altron, if I'm not mistaken. Why would he put his name to something that's just a blatant lie?
Was that, and I would give that to him. As I say, it is premised largely on the fact that Eskom has experienced a customer exodus. The reason why they have got excess power is purely because the customers have left, and customers are going to continue to live in droves for a simple reason. The day that Eskom can tell us that they will reduce the colossal 454 cents, including VAT, per kilowatt hour cost to the consumer, then we will believe them. If anything, by now, the projection, and I'm talking about a few years ago, was that the tariffs should have been at R1.18 a kilowatt hour, not the R3.95 minimum. It should have been at R1.18. And for the lower income household, where they are using less than 20 amps, then they should have been paying no more than 84 cents a kilowatt hour. Right now, they are paying well over R2.
Let's hope we get to that. Here's the last thing, right? So, the majority of people are listening. We have a sizable amount of politicians, I know that, and lobbyists and different groupings. But we have the public. nationwide, connected to the national pulse, and their pulse rates are racing every single day when things affect them. How should they interpret all of this going into an election and beyond, considering there's a whole range of mixed emotions that we're experiencing? We are having this, what would be the right word? An Indian summer, I suppose, isn't it? There's this extended period of joy.
Yes, I think what we should actually demand of Eskom is that we must remind Eskom that South Africa remains an energy poor country. We now have got 2.8 megawatt hours per capita in terms of consumption. That figure was 3.2 megawatt hours per capita in 2021. And in order for this economy to grow at a minimum of 3.4% instead of the 0.9% that is projected currently, the Eskom has got a duty to actually increase the electricity so that the consumption per capita can be at 3.8 megawatt hours. And unless we get to that, the economy cannot grow, cannot create jobs, because we are not seeing corresponding investment in response to the purported good performance by Eskom, because then we should have been hearing that there is investment in the energy-intensive industries of mining, mineral processing, agriculture, data centers, and in that field is completely we are seeing a complete exodus of even big mining companies.
All right, Seppo Khadima, let's leave it at that. Energy analyst there. Fascinating conversation. Basically, bottom line, we're experiencing sunshine as far as electricity goes. Beware the storm clouds.
Stellies gets it that they can never catch Masandawana, but they want to secure the second position. Meanwhile, Kabuyelo loves it on the summit and want to grab 3 points to extend their lead. This is the DSTV Premiership. Witness the unmatched passion of Mzansi's beautiful game. Stellenbosch FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC on Saturday, 18 May at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Which is the best way to reach success? Is it best to go alone so you can go fast? Or for many to go together so they can go far? What if you need to go fast and far? At RMB, we believe the best way to success doesn't make you choose when both are possible. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Now, you may remember this. Mangaliso Mkhatshwa was jailed, tortured, banned by the apartheid government. but he went on to be a deputy minister and a mayor. In 1994, he spoke passionately about the role of ordinary citizens in shaping the future by voting. And 30 years later, that has not changed. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Mkhatshwa's struggle by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote. Hashtag Remember Me.
SAFM. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's now talk about a fascinating, important, worrisome position. The Police Minister, Becky Cele, has acknowledged, and the key word is acknowledged, that the South African Police Service has paid out over 2.2 billion rands in civil claims for, wait for this one, wrongful arrests and detentions. So wrongful arrests, wrongful detentions. Okay, let's understand all of this. Gareth Newman is with me. Gareth is the Head of Justice and Violence Prevention at the Institute for Security Studies. Gareth, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Yes, thanks for having me on, and hello to everybody listening.
Thank you. Right, so what do you make of this reality admitted now by the Minister?
Well, this is a long-standing challenge that the South African Police Service has faced for many years now. It's the large amount of money that has to pay out to victims of unlawful police behavior every year. And it has been increasing quite considerably. So if you think about the last 10 years or so, it used to be just over about 100 million. And last year, it was already up to 647 million rand last year alone. And it seems to be continually increasing. And this is a key indicator of unlawful police conduct. This is money where people have laid claims against the police to get damages paid back to them, and they usually go to court, and these are proven cases where there's evidence of bad behavior from the police officers. And
Okay. So, I mean, the figures are staggering in a country where we need every single rand, right? And we know that. So, with 2.2, not even million, billion rands in civil claims. What has the police minister said in mitigation? Did he say anything about it?
No, I don't think he said anything about it. I think it was this information is made available every year in the police annual reports. But in this case, it came out recently because a member of parliament asked a question of the minister to set out exactly how much money was spent over the last 5 years in civil claims. So he hasn't said anything about it, but it is something that is highly concerning because it shows that poor police conduct is widespread. And not only does that lead to reductions in public trust, we know from their surveys that about 3 out of 4 South Africans tend not to have high levels of trust in the police. But not only that, this is money that could be going towards hiring more police officials, making sure they got better equipment, better training, and instead it's going to the victims of unlawful police conduct. So it's critical about, the only way you solve this is to make sure that you strengthen your internal integrity management and accountability mechanisms, so that police officers know exactly what the standards are and are held directly accountable when they fail to meet these standards. Because when they behave like this, it undermines all the hard-working, honest men and women in blue who are working under very difficult circumstances.
I mean, it does talk about just wholesale inefficiency, because, I mean, inefficiency would manifest from poor training and poor morale and poor teamwork and poor team building, isn't it? And all of that comes together to deliver what you've just mentioned.
Yes, it's a systemic problem because it starts off with obviously who they're recruiting, what are the kind of people, the characteristics of the people that are being recruited, how they're being trained, and then how they're being managed in the police stations. Not only in terms of their performance, but are we motivating our police officials if they do work within the standards expected, the codes of conduct that they sign? Are they recognized and rewarded for that on the one hand, but then when they fail to do this, are there appropriate steps taken? And I think we've seen really a reduction in discipline in the police for some time. About in 2015, 2014, 15, they were able to hold well over 5,000 disciplinary hearings a year. Now they struggle to hold just over 1,000. So you can see that system for dealing with ill discipline as it declines contributes to greater amount of police ill discipline and greater amounts of money being paid out to victims of this.
Okay, in 30 seconds, what now?
Well, ideally, the minister would come out and make a very strong statement about what they're going to do to ensure that police officers who cause money to be paid out are held personally and directly accountable for this. Then you might see things changing.
Okay, and that's where we can leave it. Yeah, certainly, we have so many, we speak about the national pulse and the national pulse rate, and going from the issues of threats of violence before an election to what we're talking about now, to electricity, and then this goodness, all of that contributes, doesn't it? Let's get the news headlines now. It's 4:30 with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, George Mayor Leon van Wyk has told a ceremony to mark 1 week since the building collapsed that this has been an extremely difficult time and his thoughts remain with the families of those affected. The NPA says the partner of the late Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Mokgoro could face a charge of culpable homicide following her death. And internet users in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda and Uganda have been complaining about poor connectivity as service providers across East Africa acknowledge that there has been a problem. Details with Greg at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy coming out of Pretoria today. There's been a crash just after Eufius Road, so it's on the N14. The N14, as you pick it up from Kogosi Mampuru, is very heavy, but then behind that there's a really big backlog on Brooklyn Road and on Nelson Mandela. Those routes that take you down through, and Elandsport, if you like, those routes that take you down from Pretoria across from Brooklyn into Fountain Circle, all jammed up because of problems getting down Christina de Wit and in towards Eufius to join the N14. So really big backlogs there on the highway and on the approaches from Brooklyn and from the CBD area. The N1 going north, the breakdown at Carsfontaine's been there all afternoon, just starting to cause a delay. The R21 is heavy coming away from the airport. There's a big backlog of traffic heading up towards the Benoni exit. Traffic parking back through to Atlas Road already, so that's heavy. Leaving Durban, a crash at Spaghetti Junction. Traffic is parked all the way back through to Tollgate Bridge and looking pretty bad. And also bad is the run from Pietermaritzburg, Durban bound. A breakdown at Ashburton. Traffic all the way back through to Market Road at this stage. A big truck crash at Hamburg on the R72. That's just outside East London. That's likely to be causing some delays if you're that side of the province today. And Cape Town looking fairly standard. Nothing too outrageous in the traffic. The N1 outbound to Coburg interchange is busy, and then it stays busy right through to about the Belleville area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
To me, we have a South African rugby captain, but we also have an all-black captain, maybe a former all-black captain.
All-Black captain indeed, Sam Cane. He announced today that he would be returning to Japanese club rugby at the end of the season and retiring from the international game. The 32-year-old said that he had decided to sign up for an extended stay at Century St. Goliath, where he is currently playing on a sabbatical and thus giving him eligibility to play for New Zealand. In cricket, the West Indies men are scheduled to host South Africa for 3 T20s ahead of the commencement of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. South Africa, England and Bangladesh are set to bring the cricketing waves to the Caribbean shores from May to December this year. 3 T20s from the busy schedule are slated to be played as part of the Men's T20 World Cup preparations later this month. Then in football, Kaizer Chiefs coach Kevin Johnson has responded to questions over a lack of leadership within the squad following another change of captain against Amazulu and Amakosi have had multiple different captains this season, and Johnson says that this rotation of captaincy has nothing to do with challenges in leadership, but rather showing that the club has many players capable of leading. Elsewhere, former Manchester United defender Gary Neville hopes that the history of the club can inspire the current squad. United, who have now equaled their tally for their most defeats at home in a season, had at least 6 defenders out through injury, as well as their playmaker Bruno Fernandes and forward Marcus Rashford yesterday. With United's season grinding to a halt, the team can still potentially salvage some pride with a FA Cup final victory against local rivals Manchester City, even though it looks just a tad bit too.
The team that 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was a team that had been used to winning for 6, 7, 8 years. But what I'd hope that this current group of players and manager are, let's say 3 weeks away, that Manchester City Cup finals there. go and defy all odds, go and win that game, and that could be the start of something special. It could be the start of a 7 or 8, 10-year journey like Manchester United went on. You know, Sir Alex Ferguson was 3 years trophyless, was 6 years without a Premier League title, and he won the FA Cup in '89. That started a level of belief in a group of players, and there's no doubt that it's going to be difficult against City in a few weeks, but if they can somehow win, I'm desperate for them to win, then out of a really difficult season, something special could happen, because it just needs that little bit of a glimmer of hope, that light at the end of the tunnel, and Manchester United need that at this moment in time, because it's been really difficult, particularly the last few weeks.
Then in golf, Rory McIlroy won the Wells Fargo Championship for the 4th time in his career, finishing 5 shots clear of overnight leader Xander Schauffele in the 17 under par. McIlroy bogeyed the 18th to finish with a 6 under par final round of 65. And when he was asked how he managed to secure a 4th title, this is what he had to say.
I'm not sure. You know, that was a big moment on 7. I 3-putted, Xander made an eagle, and then, you know, Xander was inside me on 8. I knew I really needed to hold that putt just to try to stay or keep up with him, and then, you know, he missed his, I birdied 9, and then I just went on a run that, for whatever reason, I'm able to go on at this golf course. But, you know, Quail Hollow, Charlotte in general has been really good to me over my career, and, you know, this is just another great day to sort of add to all the rest of them.
That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin
Let me
Kabele.
just say this very quickly before, so that we don't forget. So as a Man United fan, I wanted Man United to win, as poor as they are.
Yeah.
But with 5 minutes to go, and they still didn't score, and they were losing 1-0 to Arsenal. I really wanted Arsenal to win, because I'm just romantic, and I love a final game of the season scenario. So for me, as a Man United fan, what I'd want, Man City to draw Tuesday night, which was a level with Arsenal, but Arsenal had a goal difference, and they go to the final games of the season. Like, that's the dream.
Are you sure the other dream that is silent is not wanting to see Manchester City win the
No,
league again?
I'd certainly prefer Arsenal, but I certainly want it to go to the last 5 minutes of the season, and that'd be great. Yeah.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, we have. I'm going to pick out some of your calls just now and WhatsApp, since some really interesting things coming through. But let's get to the markets first up, as always. We do it around this time. The market update with Makwe Masilela. Makwe, hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Absolutely right. You have lots to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, looking at Vodacom yearly results, the guys, remember, they bought the business in Egypt, and that contributed significantly to the 29.1% increase when it comes to group revenue, group service revenue, and that was also supported by the resilient performance in their largest market, which happens to be South Africa. Remember, for MTN, the largest market is Nigeria, and we know that this year they're celebrating 30 years, and they serve 203 million customers across the group. MTN serves almost 295 million customers, and the guys, they've got 78.9 million financial services customers. MTN, they've got 72.5 million, and we've seen Vodacom's net profit going up by 6.4%, with their profit asset and earnings per share dropping 10.8%. The reason being they had some start-up losses in Ethiopia, and also higher finance and energy cost, and also their dividend per share dropped by 11.9%. And Robex, that we know that is more of an infrastructure development and constructions material supplies company. They're involved in road, civil engineering, stuff like that. They've seen a pleasing performance for the year, given challenges faced by the country and the industry. And also their diversified business model can be evidenced when it comes to their order book of 25.5 billion, which is a 27.5% growth. Revenue was up 13.8%, profit as headline earnings per share up 21.3%, and the final dividend up 21%. As we are talking, the share price is up nicely, 10%.
Global markets?
You know, the poor Chinese data and reports that we had some poor Chinese data and also some reports that the guys are planning to issue ultra-long bonds, plus also the US-China trade tensions. Unfortunately, they were weighing on market sentiments earlier in the session, but market participants are eagerly waiting for the US CPI, and it's so crucial that the rounding to the second decimal place could make all the difference, and we know that a low number could likely boost bets that the Fed could cut as from July. Currently, the probability there's 25%, and equally a high inflation print could push a rate cut out past September. As we know now, lately we're thinking that probably they will cut in September. And I guess a straightforward interpretation of financial market performance is that there's more underlying strength when it comes to the global economy than had been anticipated, and higher interest rates are more of a reflection of such rather than obstructing global growth. So markets are waiting for bigger tests later this week, and we've seen that Anglo-American rejected a PHP 15% improved offer, making the takeover offer of almost 43 billion US dollars. So the pressure is now on Anglo to show shareholders how it can deliver more value on its own, while BHP will need to improve its offer again for a deal to happen. And oil is up on signs that China may do more to boost growth, and we see Brent crude is up 1% at $83 a barrel, and gold traders awaited key US inflation data, which could shed light on the timing of rate cuts. Gold is down 0.7% at 2,342. Platinum is up 0.3% at 1,008. DAX, CAC, FTSE down 0.1%, but the Dow is up 0.2%. S&P is up 0.1%, and the JSE is up 0.3%. Ashraf, the rand is holding its ground against the major currencies. We see now it firmed almost 0.7% against the US dollar, trading at 18.30 and 22.98 to the pound and 19.77 to the euro.
And that's where we can leave it. We'll chat tomorrow. Makwe, thank you for your time, as always.
Pleasure.
There we are. Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at the Makwe Fund Managers. I'll pick out your calls. Check out your WhatsApps. Check out if you're tweeting, looking out for it on the social media platforms with the hashtag The National Pulse. All of that right after this.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Call us on 086 000 2032. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Do you have an opinion regarding the conversation that I had with Gareth Newham about the Minister of Police, Becky Cele, acknowledging that 2.2 billion rands in civil claims have been paid out for wrongful arrests and detentions? What's your point? Do you have an opinion about Eskom's energy availability factor now breaching the 70% mark, and many suggesting it's just too good to be true? What's your point? You tell me. Brian Mabai is appointing Mr. Garda. Good afternoon. Don't call me Mr. Man, just Ashraf. I'm going to call you Brian, so just Ashraf, right? The people who you just interviewed looks like they represent the opposition to me. They are the National Pulse. One speaks about violence on the election aftermath, the other one Eskom. But great show on a Monday. Well, there we are. No, we must have a great show every single day. So that's the challenge. We need to be like a champion show, and you need to make sure that you hold us accountable to doing just that. Okay. Let's get some calls now. We have I think it's Sipo first up in East London. Hi, Sipo.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good indeed. Right. What's your point?
I've got a view, man, on this funding of political parties by foreign countries or foreign entities.
Go for it.
My view is we are being misled in the main. We are being misled by people who know exactly why they're throwing us off. Because I can tell you, money that funds political parties comes from the fiscus. Whether through IEC or parliamentary allocation or direct to municipalities in an underhanded manner. That's how these parties are being funded, and the blue and white in the main is being funded in an underhand manner, and that is why they are pointing us to a wrong direction. We've got South African Revenue Services, we've got FICA in the bank, and money flows through the bank. There can be no money flow that is not traceable or not identifiable.
So who's deceiving us then?
No. It's. You see, I know you will know this. Remember who was the Auditor General before the current one?
Okay, so you're saying, wait, but what you're saying? You're saying in terms of Auditor General telling you the office, that is, right? Or what?
Yes, I'm saying there are leaks there. There are leaks in our public finance system, and those leaks are huge. And compare this current Auditor General with the guy that passed to me, Timi Makwetu. He even pushed for the change of legislation for government officials who are found to have spent government money irregularly and fruitlessly, that certificate of debt.
Okay.
Ask the current Auditor General how many certificates of debt has he issued? None. Zilch.
Let's see if we get a chance to do that. All right, Sipho, thanks for that call. Got that? So you're rather concerned about, as you said, money from overseas, a decoy being used to loot. Right. Okay. I'm sure you're thinking about it, as we are. In fact, where are you around the country? I always like that, once every couple of days. Tell me where you are. Just WhatsApp, probably the easiest way to do it, or you can post on our social media pages. Some people do it regularly using the hashtag The National Pulse. Tag us on SFM Radio, Facebook, as well as on the X Factor, because that really is the X Factor on the former Twitter, right? Percy in Limpopo, go ahead.
No, thanks very much. I just want to deal with the assertion that the ANC would lose its majority and therefore there will be violence. There's no such thing. The ANC is working on getting its 50 plus more percent, and we are comfortable that we are not campaigning for a coalition. And therefore, the assertion that if we are to lose, there will be violence, I don't think that is correct. We have lost in the metros in Gauteng. There was no violence that has been perpetuated by the African National Congress.
So you're therefore challenging the assertion of there's two parts. One is the ANC going to get below 50? That's the one point. The second point is if they do get below 50, there'll be violence. Now, which one are you challenging?
I'm saying the ANC will get more than 50%.
Okay.
And on the other part, I'm saying that if the ANC does not do that, it does not mean that the ANC will fight. But that is not an option. We're not speaking about 50 and below. We're speaking about getting more percentage, 57 plus.
But listen, everybody speaks about that. We had Ace Makashula the other day saying we're going to wrap up the Free State. Everybody knows me. What I'm just trying to say is the only barometer, forget the polls and your and my opinion about the 50% and plus, would be the election coming up in just over 2 weeks' time. So we'll see about that, yeah?
Yes.
Thanks, Percy. The second part, and I must say I concur more with Percy to say, hold it, man. We have no evidence. We have evidence of people getting angry, people suspicious about different things, but there's no evidence of high-level political intolerance, a la Trump, by the way, in the USA, where it will turn out into absolute violence. We don't have that. So I'm not saying it cannot happen, but why would we then automatically default to say we think it's going to happen? I don't particularly agree with that. Chris in Tshwane, hi.
Hi. How are you, sir?
I'm okay, Chris. How's Pirax, Pretoria? Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to pass comment on the issue of the African National Congress having to perform poorly. Is to say, I think this is the work of opposition parties that which are not campaigning in order to come and service the South Africans, but are focusing their campaign on the anti-campaigning African National Congress. I think the mistake that they are making is that you hear the likes of EFF, UDM, all of those guys, they are looking for a job,
No, but why do we say that and we assume the ANC is not looking for a job? Why can't we say they're all looking for jobs?
No. Mind you, I'm saying they are looking for a job because all of them were parliamentarians, and some are still parliamentarians today. What is it better that they are going to do that they could not do when they were in parliament? I think as South Africans, we must at some point be realistic, We've got a constitution to protect And it cannot be that when we fail to protect and serve the South Africans, we turn around to come and form parties to say, hey, we're going to do this and that. You were there. If you failed, then get out.
All right, Chris, I got that. You got us thinking. Well, let me just give you my quick commentary on that one. I think, there's two parts to that one. The one part is that people who've been part of other political parties who haven't performed and may find themselves sort of put on the wayside now, well, good riddance to them in terms of their parties. That's first point. Secondly, do they have the right to come together in groupings to form another party? That everybody has that right. I mean, that's a democracy. We have a democracy in this country. They can do that. Should you and I be forced to vote for them? No, that's up to us, you and me. We have choices, isn't it? So if you're not convinced by them, let's do that. Let's not do that. On the other hand, the other issue, which is, and I'm talking about the dominant three parties in the country in order, ANC, DA, EFF, they also don't have like a permanent right to say we will be the big shots and you guys are the small guys who just stay outside. Who has that right? We don't have that. We shouldn't think like that. Okay, here's a quick one. Lorenzo Davids, great that you've WhatsApped. Lorenzo saying, Ashraf, I'm listening to you as I wait in the queue at the Vaal Plaza toll gate to enter Joburg. Great show, Lorenzo. Well, great. Well, Lorenzo, then you owe me a visit. So since you're going to be in Joburg, and we need to talk to you about your traversing the country on this, your literal election road trip. Maybe we'll do that soon. Let's get to Election Watch in a moment.
Hear that? That's the sound of deliciousness in your kitchen after watching Ready Steady Cook. You don't season the same no more. The way you chop, slay. You do it with so much flair, because you've channeled your Salt Bay. Uyashisa. Turn up the heat. Off the bone with the meat. You're in your kitchen prime. Always dishing on time. Need I serve more? Catch Ready Steady Cook weekdays at 7 p.m. on S3 and channel your inner 5-star chef. Channel a better you with S3.
Am I left or right-brained? I'm leaning right. Right? However, I do have some left-brain tendencies. Perhaps I'm left-brained with right-brain tendencies. Am I overthinking this? I don't want to be caught underthinking it. Or maybe I'm overthinking about underthinking the overthinking. Which am I?
At RMB, the simple answer is both. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity that doesn't make you choose, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Location, London. Unit, the London Serious Crime Unit. The Steering, Luther, a dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge. Every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
This Election Watch feature is brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the #RememberMe initiative.
Yes, indeed. I think we've had a fascinating journey, between us and SAFM and the Kagiso Trust, because they've set up this conversation every single day, in fact, called Remember Me, as part of that call to remember those who voted before, but also to encourage you and I, in spite of our differences sometimes of which political party, but essentially at its core, they're saying, vote. Please, please vote, because that is a vote for the entrenchment of democracy in the country. So let's get another take on the Election Watch Remember Me feature with Reverend Dean Zwoitahu, and that's Nebutalu. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. You, of course, are a trustee of the Kagiso Trust, right?
Ashraf. I am a trustee. I am also a former chair of Kagiso Trust.
Okay, well, really a privilege to talk to you. How, I've been sort of prefacing the connection first about Kagiso Trust being on the program here every day and the importance of encouraging the vote under that hashtag Remember Me. Internalize it from yourself, and how do you feel about it?
I really feel great because it brings me back again in contact with, I can say, our forefathers who have shown us the way, and they have struggled so much for freedom and democracy in South Africa. And so if we can, when we talk about hashtag Remember Me, we actually get in touch with our forefathers and the values that they stood for.
Now, how important is that? You see, on the one hand, when we try and convince people to vote, we say vote to entrench democracy or vote for whichever party you think is best served to provide a life that will be life-changing for the majority of South Africans. You're saying as part of Remember Me, in fact, also it's a reminder to say, look at the thousands of people who've actually got us here in the first place.
Indeed, we have to think about it, because we always say that we must remember, especially in South Africa, that our democracy was not cheap. Just for us to be able to get the right to vote was as a result of the struggles of many people. Some of them who paid dearly, ultimately with their lives. A lot of them suffered. Few are still with us during this particular time. But it is quite important we keep on reminding people and ourselves that let's not take this democracy for granted. It's a treasure that has been won for us, and we have to make the best of it. So when we are at the time when we are called upon, for instance, to participate in elections, it is part of making the best of the democracy and the sacrifices of our forefathers.
And therefore, in terms of Kagiso Trust in particular positioning itself, because you have a fascinating history, the trust that is, positioning itself around the issues of democracy and Remember Me. Tell me about that.
Kagiso Trust, it positioned itself primarily along the vision of a prosperous, peaceful, equitable, and just society. That is the vision of the trust. And it seeks to foster a community of responsible citizens who will participate meaningfully in the economy in order to make an impact for an equitable South Africa. So we continue to believe that we have got a number of pillars as Kagiso Trust, but we continue to believe that education is critical to the eradication of poverty in South Africa itself. Yes.
Now carry on, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that if you would recall quite well, that the founders of Kagiso Trust, people like Beyers Nodi, Max Coleman. I don't know if you've heard of a person called Max Coleman.
I've certainly known it. And Chris Coleman, or Neil Coleman is a son, if I'm not mistaken, who's part of the Institute for Economic Justice, if I got that right, yeah?
Yeah, I know when we talk about Kagiso Trust and the struggles that people actually waged during that time, people like Max don't seem to appear quite a lot, because, you see, Max was a background person, but he was the pillar, the really anchor. He functioned in Kagiso Trust very quietly. In fact, for information, I was recruited to join Kagiso Trust by Max Coleman.
There we are. Okay. Yeah. So
I was quite young, Ashraf.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised because I was young, and I think that's another issue which is very important, because it was in 1986. You know how old I was in 1986, Ashraf?
Well, you better tell us, and you got 30 seconds to tell us.
I was 26 years old.
Okay.
And here I was picked up by people like Max Coleman, elderly people, to say that
please come and work with us, at that particular age.
Well, you see, you were a 26-year-old lighty, but they saw something in you that was quite a gem, and they said, "Holy, we need to get this guy on our side because here's someone who can really contribute." And you've clearly done that. So let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We'll continue chatting about the Election Watch and the Remember Me campaign as part of Kagiso Trust here on SAFM all throughout the elections itself. Much appreciate your time, Reverend Dean, and that's Zwoitahu Nebutalo, who's a trustee of the Kagiso Trust.
This Election Watch feature was brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the hashtag Remember Me initiative.
Right, so the news desk has a change around. What do we call it? Like changing places, so to speak. Madupi is not around, but Greg House is now taken over. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. It's more like a tag team effort. In this news update, a ceremony to mark 1 week since George building collapse in African countries hit by internet outage. Good day to you. The Mayor of George in the Western Cape, Leon van Wyk, has told the ceremony to mark 1 week since the building collapse that this has been an extremely difficult time and his thoughts remain with the families of those affected. The collapse claimed the lives of at least 27 people, many of whom are believed to be construction workers. Rescue teams have observed a minute of silence for the victims of the disaster. Van Wyk headed that ceremony.
One goes through each of these interviews and having to almost think on your feet, and at the same time one lives through this whole very difficult time that the families must be experiencing. And, you can't imagine what they must have felt like, and one thinks of the victims here.
City Power says the installation of another cable that had been destroyed by an underground fire following tampering with cables along the N1 near Braamfontein in Johannesburg earlier this month has been completed. It says 85% of affected customers now have power. City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena.
Another cable has been successfully installed between Bree Street and Newtown Junction. That cable has been livened up, and customers such as Newtown Junction Mall, alongside the businesses around that area, including Car Street, are due to be restored later today, pending the finalization of the further tests on those cables. The outage triggered by acts of vandalism has affected customers in Parktown, Newtown, Braamfontein, Joburg CBD, especially around Bree Street and the surrounding areas.
The NPA in the Northern Cape says the partner of the late Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Mokgoro could face a charge of culpable homicide following her death. He was the driver during a car crash which left Mokgoro with several injuries last year. She had been in hospital following the crash in Warrington in the Northern Cape and passed away last week. Her partner was charged with reckless and negligent driving. The NPA's Mojelefo Senekutsane says David Malesi is currently out on a warning.
He is criminally charged and facing 1 count of reckless and negligent driving. There is a possibility of amending charges to culpable homicide following the death of the judge. The accused will be back in court on the 30th of May in the Bartley West Magistrate Court. He appeared on a J175 and is currently on warning.
In election news, Cape Townians have expressed mixed feelings about the 3 ballot papers for the May 29th elections. This comes as political parties intensify their campaigning ahead of the polls. Some say the inclusion of independent candidates shows a growing democracy.
I think it's going to be kind of interesting because it's going to be 3 ballots, and that's the first time being 3 ballots. Normally it's just 2.
I'm aware that there are 3 different voting categories, and I think that is a positive way forward.
Now people must be taught about voting. People used to vote with 1 paper or 1 ballot paper, but now there are 3 ballot papers. There will be too much confusion, I'm telling you.
Finally, internet users in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda and Uganda have been complaining about poor connectivity as service providers across East Africa acknowledge there's been a problem. Industry expert Ben Roberts has told the BBC the patchy service was a result of faults in the undersea cables that connect the region to the rest of the world through South Africa. A similar outage was experienced in parts of West and Southern Africa in March. The top story, the Mayor of George in the Western Cape has told a ceremony to mark 1 week since the building collapse. This has been an extremely difficult time and his thoughts remain with the families of those affected. The collapse has claimed the lives of at least 27 people. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
Cricket West Indies unveil action-packed home fixtures for men's team, and Free State Crinums aim to stay on top in Telkom Netball League. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, it's looking a lot better coming out of Pretoria now. The N14, the crash scene just after Euthias Road has been cleared, and that traffic is starting to move on. If you're leaving the airport at Joburg heading towards Pretoria, quite a big backlog today. I'm guessing it's probably roadworks related. There's a big queue from Atlas Road making your way up towards the R23 Benoni exit. Good news, if you're leaving Pietermaritzburg, the stationary truck at Ashburton has been cleared away, so that traffic has moved off. The M4 over Blue Lagoon, very heavy up towards Virginia Airport if you're on your way to Umhlanga on the coastal route. The highway route's fairly busy as well, with a breakdown in the roadworks before Gateway, so some queuing pressure there. Cash and transit heist on the Kokstad Matatial road, the CR56 in the Eastern Cape area by Cedarville, so there's likely to be some disruption there for a little while longer. And Cape Town, the R300 running north, that's quite heavy today, up through Brackenfell to climb into the N1 outbound delay towards Okavango Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM.
Established in 1904, 120 years later, they're lifting their first ever Bundesliga title. Bayer Leverkusen finally made it. Yet, they still want to close the curtain with a win. While FC Augsburg intend to play their hearts out and finish the race with victory. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the champs of the 2023-2024 season, Bayer Leverkusen versus FC Augsburg on Saturday, 18 May at 3 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Right, we've been talking about important issues about voting, so you should remember this one. Smangalisa Mkhatshwa was jailed, tortured, and banned by the apartheid government, but he went on to be a deputy minister and a mayor. In 1994, he spoke passionately about the role of ordinary citizens in shaping the future by voting, and 30 years later, that hasn't changed. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust's Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Mkhatshwa's struggle by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote. Hashtag remember me.
I am Dr. Senati Fisher, President of All Citizens Party, ACP. ACP is the visionary political party for every South African. We are committed to serve the nation with dignity and integrity. We will create 3 million jobs in first 6 months of taking over. Scrap altogether the credit blacklisting for our people to buy homes. Free quality sanitary towels for all women. South Africa, go out to vote for the first female president, Dr. Senati Fisher. With unity, we can bring real change now.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Always love it when people tweet out where they are, and see, given Makush has certainly done that. He's saying good afternoon to the team from the National Pulse, listening from Pretoria. That's on the X platform, tweeting it out. You can do the same. Use the hashtag the National Pulse, tag SFM Radio and myself, but also you can just post it via WhatsApp, which is just great. WhatsApp, as you know, in text or voice note form, 0614 104 107. To call in, 086 000 2032. What do you make of the conversation I had with Darby Ruud earlier on? As well as Prof. Duvenage, it was, who spoke about party political funding and suggesting that many parties have not yet complied with submitting their complete party funding list, if I can call it that. But Darby Ruud suggesting that there's huge concerns around the elections before, pre, and then during and post. We're going to get to that in just a moment. Just some comments we've had. There's a comment saying Ashraf Truth, very nice guy, almost forgotten about Neil Coleman and Eric Molobi. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have the caliber kind of leadership these days. Keep them coming. And just a last thought of nostalgia. I went into a shopping centre on Saturday and I saw some marbles, and I promise you I took the marbles, put it in my hand, and of course using that thumb finger to shoot the way you shoot marbles. How often did you get nostalgic? I mean, like seriously nostalgic, because I took a picture and a video of it as well. Okay, if you get nostalgic, what is it that you get nostalgic over? Like me and marbles, playing marbles. Let me know. Okay, but let's get on to serious things. I suppose understanding our marbles around the country of the political space is a big enough issue to concern us. My guest now is Zakhele Ndlovu, who is a political analyst based at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Zakhele, I appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Good afternoon. So, of course, you are aware we had a chat earlier on, right, around the issue of Darby Ruud, the chief economist of the Efficient Group, and he made the point that he's concerned about safety in South Africa in the period before, which is now, during, and then after the elections for a whole lot of reasons, and key amongst them is, besides potential political change or leadership change, issues of underlying issues like, poverty and instability and inequality in our country. But when he spoke about violence, I first asked him, that's Darby Ruud, to explain what type of violence, because you get violence and you get violence.
No. I'm talking about what we saw about 2 years ago. I think the police are probably much better prepared for something like this now than 2 years ago. But let me give you one example. Lesofie, the Premier of Gauteng, for example, recently said that the day after the elections you can go to any private hospital, for example, and be treated. So imagine 100 people ends up at some private hospital somewhere and the security, there's some sort of confrontation with the security there. That as an example. So, and there are many other examples. We see, for example, this new political party, the NK party, there's a lot of infighting there. We know that's quite a sensitive issue around Zuma. So if the infighting continues and there's some sort of disagreement, then it's quite possible that can also flare up in some kind of violence, especially in KZN and perhaps even in Gauteng. Those are the kinds of examples that I'm referring to.
Yeah, but again, specifically when you say violence, I'm just trying to say, to what length? I mean, you gave the example of what happened in Durban or KZN a few years ago. I mean, let's just talk about the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is there is violence. Now, what's the worst case scenario of violence? I mean, what what level of violence are we talking about?
Well, worst case scenario for violence, I guess, there's some group of people are unhappy with the political outcome, as an example, and they decided they're going to storm one of these big shops, for example, and plundering the shops. And you know what happened 2 years ago? The whole thing spread out like wildfire all over KZN and in Gauteng especially. That's the kind of thing. We need a spark to set the whole thing in motion, and that's what I am concerned about. The sparks can happen all over the place. I gave you a couple of possibilities that can happen. What concerns me, this kind of thing can pick up momentum because of the underlying factors, and the underlying factors are high levels of unemployment and poverty. Those are the forces that's going to drive violence in a country, potentially.
Okay, that's the voice of Dawie Rood. Many suggesting, in fact, he doesn't have a case. Where's his stats? Where's his figures? He's giving an opinion on that one. Let's get another thought on this. So, Zakhel and Ndlovu, you've heard that. Your thoughts?
Yes. Let me just say that I think for me the biggest concern is that in 2021 during the riots we saw how, for a couple of days, the government and the law enforcement agencies had no control over what was happening. And then subsequent to that, the president spoke about the who he identified as instigators or masterminds of the riots. And almost 3 years later, not even one of those instigators or masterminds of the violence has been successfully treated. So I think that that could make those who are contemplating of violence to go ahead and do as they please, because they know there will be no consequences. So that for me is the biggest concern. When people are not scared, they know.
But do you think that's the case now? Are people not scared?
Not at all. I mean, people know there are no consequences. So as long as people see that they can break the law and get away with it, hey, we're going to stop them because they know that they have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Although I think that there's two parts of it. The issues of common criminals and crooks and hijackers. I mean, that's another huge problem in our country, and it's something we talk about often. That's one part of it. This year is social unrest, according to Dawie Rood, that is very linked to political instability. Do you think is there any justification for making that point?
Yeah, I think to a very extent there is justification for making the claims that he's making. We saw a few months ago 2 members of a political party threatening to resort to violence should certain demands of theirs are not met. And that's what I'm talking about, that people who make threats of violence should be dealt with harshly to send a strong message that acts of violence cannot be tolerated.
But you see, I've argued the point which I argued with Dawie Rood about. I'm not saying political party leaders don't argue. In fact, they argue a lot in Parliament and outside Parliament. But by and large, I think we have a very mature democracy that we can be proud of. That means they will argue, but they will also sit on the same table. Don't you see that?
I don't know. I'm going to beg to differ that our democracy has taught or even deepened. I mean, if you look at, for example, this is not a related issue, but when it comes to accountability, our system of checks and balances is working efficiently. Some politicians do things and get away because our systems or mechanisms of checks and balances are not working. Just in about 2 weeks' time, we'll be into the polls. And many of our voters, the majority of our voters, are not equipped to make informed decisions at the polls, to hold representatives accountable. So as long as we live in a country where accountability systems are not working, then we can't speak about democracy Pretoria.
All right, let's leave it at that. Zakhele Ndlovu certainly got me thinking. The question is, how does that impact on the national pulse? Zakhele Ndlovu is a political analyst based at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Right. Do you concur with his point of view? You can tell me, as always, WhatsApp, quick WhatsApp, text or voice notes are welcome, but you also have the option of calling in. To call in, it's 086 000 2032. Otherwise, to WhatsApp, it's 0614 104 107. Voice or text, but also you can tweet it out on the X platform using that hashtag The National Pulse. I'll pick it up in a moment.
Location, London. Unit, the London Serious Crime Unit. The Steering, Luther, a dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge. Every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012 568 3233. That's 012 568 3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, we're going to get into issues around technology and innovation in a moment or so, but here's another comment about the X factor in a political party.
My brother Ashraf, I wouldn't dare vote for ANC for the suffering it has given the South Africans. I wouldn't dare vote for DA of employing the illegal immigrants in hospitality, in security, and in retail. I will vote for PA because of 100 days that they have done in Little Karoo. I will vote for EFF to arrest all the criminals within the current government.
Well, there you are. We've asked that question about if you're absolutely clear on the party you're going to vote for because you just love them. That's great. But if not, then strategically, and really the key here is on strategy and being tactical. How do you vote? And that's the answers we've been getting. Here's another one.
Hey, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Mataboge again. Ashraf, I think Duvenage is fighting for one specific political party. He will come on air and be specific about certain political parties, but he will never say anything about DA and FF Plus, where he belongs. He is focusing on EFF and ANC. Reason why, we don't know. How can he be a political analyst who is not going to be impartial? I mean, he should be dealing with facts and not point fingers at specific political parties. I mean, he's making us no longer to listen to his comments because this is disappointing and an embarrassment at the end of it all. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that, Cole. But let me give you some insight. I mean, as a production team, we look at topics and then we get people who are going to comment on it. And we've certainly been invited as a guest to talk about party political funding. And in his opinion, I pushed him to say, give me the parties who have not yet revealed their sources as per the requirement. And he then mentioned the parties. So it's not him doing that willy-nilly, just a point.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. You know that
discussion you were having now with the limits and the reporting levels that parties need to make in terms of donations given to them. Well, Cyril just recently signed an amendment to that electoral bill, where even though the limits had not been discussed by Parliament or anything like that, so he has signed this thing into law, and for the next week or two, political parties can receive any amounts of money from private individuals. They don't have to disclose who it came from or how much was made. So don't you think that's quite ingenious on behalf of the ANC and the president of the country to actually do that? Nice little gap.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for the reminder, because, I mean, you're quite right. In terms of law, initially they had to submit, and parties have submitted, some parties have not. Now there's this window period. How long that's going to close, we don't know. So you're quite right. At this point in time, a person can contribute 100,000 without getting the names revealed, and something we've certainly spoken about, because it does suggest that it could be a flood of new people coming in to support a party, and they don't really want to be publicly known who they support. Thanks for that reminder. Let's get on to other issues around innovation, because we certainly pay lots of attention to that. France Kalp, in partnership with the paper giant Mondi, is making a huge difference in rural schools through their Ligbron e-learning system, which I understand is a distance learning project, and that's so important, isn't it? Connecting schools all over South Africa to an online learning network. Let's find out more about it with Nastasia Marks, who's the project manager at Ligbron e-learning systems. Nastasia, you're live with the National Pulse. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you doing?
I'm very good indeed. Right, tell me more about what you do.
So what we do, we transmit maths and science lessons to grade 11 and grade 12 learners, mostly from rural schools. And the aim is to better pass rates, because, as you know, pass rates for maths and science is really bad in South Africa at this stage and for many years already. And then we also, there's a lot to that. We also install the equipment into the schools. We maintain that. We make sure we have resources from grade 8 till grade 12, so that we can actually prepare the younger grades for when they get to grades 11 and 12, that they're already prepared with quality resources. And we also know that in the schools, you know, a lot of them doesn't have workbooks, for example, textbooks. So that's important for us to make sure that all learners have equal opportunities. And we also try to breach the digital divide between rural and urban schools.
And I think the issue of all learners is so critical, as you've made the point, right? So give me the practical manifestation of it. How does it play out?
Well, we see a lot of change in the schools. Firstly, you know, children these days they are born with a cell phone in their hands, so they love technology, and we see that when they are actually in our classes that they are more attentive. We can see that there's less absenteeism, and the fact is that the teacher will still do the lessons with the learners, but we will only do a summary of each topic, and we can also measure that yearly with pre-post testing to see that we still have an impact, and we can see it with the grade 12 results yearly. I mean, we have schools that started off with, say, a 19% pass rate, and now they're already on an 85% pass rate. We have a lot of our e-learning schools that really started off with less than 20, and now they have a 100% pass rate. So at the end of the day, the more learners that pass maths and science, it means the more of them pass with bachelor degree, and it opens so many opportunities for them to go to universities, to study, and to come back to their communities and make a difference in their community. So at the end of the day, everybody benefits.
Well, we certainly hope so. What sort of challenges have you encountered in setting this up, keeping in mind that, you know, a lot of it goes through rural communities, right?
Yeah, well, in rural communities, sometimes we have the problem of connectivity, but we started off initially 17 years back with satellite, and we went over, you know, as technology went through all the stages, we went over to Wi-Fi, and then we went over to internet lines, and currently, especially in places like Eastern Cape, where we are putting them back to satellite because it works better. So that's definitely a challenge, but at the end of the day, you know, even if we transmit 4 days a week maths and science to them, and if they can't log in for a session, example for load shedding, that's also a very big challenge in South Africa, then we record each session. So if a school can't log in because of load shedding or connectivity, they can always do the recording afterwards. And we also have different platforms like DigiCampus where they can go back to, they can listen to the lessons, they can, they have so many things. We supply them with exam papers and projects and everything that they can access anytime, anywhere, no matter where they are.
I would think you obviously want to scale this now, right? It works, so make it bigger.
Yes, we started off with 3 schools in 2008, and currently we have 90 schools, and we are actually in all the provinces of South Africa. We have 181 classrooms that is fully equipped in schools, and as I said, it is most all rural schools. So yes, at the end of the day, we want to put it in all schools in South Africa because we see the success in it. But for that, we need partners in education, like corporate companies who want to invest into schools in their areas. So if they do that, we can include more schools. At the end of the day, we really want to include all of them.
Well, let's hope that certainly happens. Right, give me a website or a form of connection that I can direct people to.
Yes, you can use www.ligbronelearning.co.za. You can also search anything if you get that on the internet, Ligbron online on your smartphone. You will also see there the ebooks. So if you just Google Ligbron online learning, you will find a lot.
Okay, online learning, but Ligbron, right? Ligbron. That's the key.
That's right.
But feel free to tweet us and tag us on both on the Twitter platform as well as on Facebook as well. We'll certainly share that. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There we are. Some exciting things there from Nastasia Marks, who's the project manager at Ligbron e-learning system. Rather enlightening, don't you think? Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. A quick look at the headlines. The electricity minister's lauded interventions at the Kusile power station, which he says have led to the rapid generation of power. The mayor of George in the Western Cape has told a ceremony to mark 1 week since the building collapsed. It has been an extremely difficult time, and his thoughts remain with the families of those affected. And Doctors Without Borders says fighting has intensified in the Sudanese city of Al Fasher, which paramilitary forces are attempting to seize. Have a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's pretty heavily backed up leaving the airport or getting away from Kempton Park on the R21 towards Tembisa and Pretoria. Big queues today from Atlas Road all the way through to the Benoni exit. The N1 from Buccleuch down to the Willie Mandela off-ramp, that stays super heavy. There's delays on the 59 heading through towards the Vaal. That's a big backlog down towards Klip River Drive. A crash on the N3 south at Spruitview, just south of Heidelberg Road, causing delays. And if you're around central Joburg, the M2's heavy today. Collision much earlier out by Maritzburg Street. As you get out towards Benrose, that traffic starts to queue back from the Crown interchange. Yet another truck broken down at Ashburton. This one's only just happened after the previous one was cleared. So traffic coming out of Peter Maritzburg starting to backlog again. Absolute gridlock around Parlock. No traffic lights today in Nunda Road at the N2. If you're going out from Seacow Lake, coming in from Newlands on the N2 North off-ramp, it's hardly moving. It is significant backlogs around that Parlock area, particularly trying to get out towards Newlands today. Cape Town side, the M7, slow go down towards Highlands Drive in the Mitchells Plain area. And if you're going from Westlake Steenberg over Oakharpsweg, just on the Westlake side towards Noordwijk, quite a backlog of traffic. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgabele.
Right, to me, rugby is the big story, right?
Yes, All Blacks captain Sam Cane announced today that he would be returning to Japanese club rugby at the end of the season and retiring from the international game. The 32-year-old flanker said that he had decided to sign up for an extended stay at Suntory St. Goliath, where he's currently playing on sabbatical, and thus giving up his eligibility to play for New Zealand. In cricket, the West Indies men are scheduled to host South Africa for 3 T20s ahead of the commencement of the men's T20 World Cup. South Africa, England and Bangladesh are set to bring the cricketing waves to the Caribbean shores from May to December this year. 3 T20s from the busy schedule are also slated to be played as part of the men's T20 World Cup preparations later this month. In football, with Stellenbosch FC set to make their debut in the CAF Interclub next season, Coach Steve Barker says that he's quite mindful of what will be a congested schedule schedule. Stellies will need more players, especially with more fixtures added to their calendar for the 2024-25 campaign. And Barker admits additions are necessary for the squad. They will play in the CAF Champions League if they hold on to second place. But Barker says that Confederations Cup will still be good in terms of consolation prize should they drop to third with 2 games. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns ladies head coach Jerry Shabalala says that an opportunity is on the table to learn different styles of play when they head to USA to play in the Women's Cup. Sundowns ladies are the first African side to be invited to the prestigious tournament, which is in its 3rd year, and they will play against Kansas City Current that plays in the National Women's Soccer League, Vessel Kobe in the J1 League in Japan, and Atletico Madrid in Spain.
It's exciting, when I heard about it, and I look at the teams that we are going to compete up against. We've got team from Asia, got team from Europe, we also got team from North America, and we are coming in as Africans. It's a good opportunity for us to go out there and test ourselves and see in terms of how far are we in terms of football in club level. We've seen our national team, but competing against those other continents, and we've seen how they fare. It's an opportunity for us to go out there and showcase our talent, and to also learn, from other diversity cultures, how and tactics from different teams, especially teams from Asia, teams from North America, so we could learn maybe 1 or 2 things, because the European teams, we always see them on TV, we watch them, and we understand how they play.
Elsewhere, Mikel Arteta says that Arsenal are already history makers, even if they are unable to claim the Premier League title from Manchester City. The Gunners' wins yesterday over Manchester United was 27th League win of the season, which is an Arsenal record in a 38-game league season, surpassing the Invisibles of 2003-04. Who won 26 league matches. Now they wait to see how City is going to play against Tottenham Hotspur tomorrow, a game that Pep Guardiola believes that should they lose that game, it means they're definitely not winning. Excuse me. And obviously with that last game for both sides just a bit later. Then in Netball Free State Crinum's coach Martha Moswatle says that they want to maintain their league through the second half of the Telkom Netball League. Crinums have leapfrogged defending champions Gauteng Jaguars to a top spot in Division A after collecting 11 points with 5 wins from 6 matches.
We just want to keep it simple and straightforward, and that is taking it game by game and making sure that we take 2 points after every game. So in short, just taking every game as it comes and winning it, so we remain top of the log. Even though we know it's not going to be easy in the top 4, but it gives you that emotional stability and just the mental power if you are number 1. So the plan is to remain number 1.
Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more on other sports tomorrow.
And you've survived.
I have survived.
Can we get a full report on how you survive tomorrow? Thank you.
We'll definitely do that.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
It's a week since that terrible building collapse, the George building. 1 week already. We'll get an update on that. Lots of different issues to now start talking about coming up shortly. We'll take your calls as well. But let's get an update now with regard to the markets and the MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha, as always. Hi, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to me. Good afternoon to the listeners. We've got a results-heavy show today. There's been a couple of results that have been reported, and we're going to be seeing if we can cover as many of them as possible. Calgro M3 reported their full-year results alongside Raubex and Vodacom, and I've got a conversation with each of the company CEOs to reflect on all 3 of those companies and see how they performed throughout the year. Hopefully we can get some insights around some of the developments from the likes of Vodacom that have expanded into Egypt, and Raubex that have that 27 or 25 billion rand pipeline that's up by 27%. So lots to unpack from a results perspective, but we also do have a conversation with independent securities around China. The Chinese market still seems to be a hive of opportunity, with the stock market trading at a discount and having reported Chinese results recently with Chinese GDP data, as I mentioned on Friday, surprising to the upside. So obviously lots to still see from that perspective in terms of potential for opportunity, and we're going to dig into that and see if it is worthwhile to have some offshore exposure to China. And then we've also got a conversation as part of our Personal Finance Mondays around what you need to consider before taking out a life cover. I've got a conversation with F&B Insure around that, and we'll hopefully get some insights and some tips on how to best navigate the life cover conversation. But before we get to that, the markets have had quite a good day, especially on the rands front. It is below 18 Rand 50. At some point, it was at 18 Rand 30, and Henku Creer has been keeping an eye on the rand and other market movements throughout the day. He joins me now to do a quick summary of what's been moving the markets. Good afternoon, Henku. Always lovely to speak to you. The rand doing what it needs to do for once, and the oil price holding steady. Are we starting off the week on the right foot?
Absolutely, Jimmy, we are, and it's nice to see that we are kicking off this week well into the green. And I must say, US markets green today, our local markets also green, but European stocks in the red. And good evening to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners as well. The Dow Jones and the S&P 500 in the US at this stage trading about 0.1% stronger, and the Nasdaq gaining about 0.3%. But then, as I mentioned, the European stocks finishing in the red this afternoon. That was the FTSE 100, the DAX and the CAC 40. All three of those lost 0.2% today. And then the JSE gained 0.3% and finished at a level of 78,687 points. The industrial index also finishing strong, 0.8% up. The financial index also gaining 0.4%. But it's the resources index that pulled this whole bunch a bit down today, and the resources index finishing 1% weaker. Naspers had another lovely day. Naspers gaining 2.2%, followed by Prosus gaining 1.6%. And there's also Standard Bank, one of the big ones, one of the 10 largest stocks on the JSE, gaining 1.8% today, as well as AB InBev and First Rand. They each finished 0.8% up. But unfortunately, Anglo lost 1% today, and Richmond 1.3% weaker at the end of the day. If we stay with companies that gave poor performances today, you'll find Thungela, which lost 4%. There's Pick n Pay again, losing 3.9%. Then Goldfields and Anglo Gold and Harmony, those three each lost 2.5%. And Vodacom, Tiger Brands and DRD Gold finished today 2% weaker. But back to the companies that gave strong performances. A company that we see more and more now these days, small company by the name of Karoo, which gained 13% today. Then Montauk Renewable Energy finished 8% stronger. And then some of the big ones again, Amplats and Implats. Amplats finished 6.5% up, and Implats gained 3.5% today. Other mining companies like Kumba and Northam gained 3% today. Then if we move over to the commodities market, the price of gold currently $2,337 an ounce. Silver is trading at $28.20. Platinum $1,001 an ounce, and palladium trading at $970. The price of Brent crude is $83.40 a barrel. Then this exchange rate, the rand really looking up and looking a lot better today. Now at the moment 18 Rand 33 to the US dollar, then 23 Rand on the dot for a pound, 19 Rand 79 for a euro, and 12 Rand and 10 cents for an Australian dollar. And a Bitcoin still maintaining its level of $63,000, which is 1.2 million Rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. We're going to keep an eye on some of these market movements, and thankfully for some of us, we focus on business news and we don't focus on EPL results. I'll leave that to Dumi to discuss that with you, Ashraf. We'll be back just after 6. Now back to you.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I talk about it myself, and work it out and where we're going. Thanks for that, Jimmy. We'll talk again tomorrow, I'm sure of that, right? Right, we're going to take your calls in a moment.
Call us on 086 000 2032. X at SAFM Radio, and at Ashraf Garda.
So, we spoke about Eskom earlier on, right? And the developing story on Eskom really does develop. So Jordan Hill-Lewis, the mayor of the city of Cape Town, has just, tweeted saying Eskom has officially called off talks with Cape Town about handing over their service areas to the city of Cape Town so that residents can get much better service and less load shedding. We want to give better service to our people. And then he's saying Eskom has failed Cape Town residents, and then sign a petition. So, yeah, lots of thoughts around that one there. Let's get to JJ in Polokwane. Hi, JJ.
Ashraf, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good talking to you. And you're chuckling. Why are you chuckling? Why are you laughing?
Did I laugh?
I thought you did. I thought you did. But it was a nice laugh. I mean, anyway, yeah.
And even Katie, last time she told me that I laughed. Maybe I did. I don't feel it.
Well, maybe you got the gift of giving warmth with just your slight sounds, and that comes across as a laugh, and we all just feel very good. So
no,
very good to you.
I think you're correct. From last week, I've been listening to SAFM, and I hear many people talking about the ANC getting less than 50%, and I don't know where they get that. Because you see, I'm part and parcel of the ANC. Where we are canvassing, there has never been a person to go and do research there. They have never been there. My home is next to the game reserve at the place called Matiani, and they don't know whether there is something called research or not. But ourselves, as we are canvassing, we are not waiting for 50%. We are working for 71%.
For the whole country?
Because, yes, national.
Okay.
National, we want to get 71%, and we will get it.
That would be the highest the ANC has ever got, ever. You know that?
It's 70. We got 70. 2004.
There we are. So?
Yeah, 2004, we got 70%. And we can't aim to go below that one. You see? And we have got a program of transformation. And fortunately, we have seen that these other parties that are accusing ANC of corruption and all those type of things, even themselves, they are coming within the ticket of corruption.
But let me interject you. When you say these other parties are accusing the ANC of corruption, you do know.
I mean,
but if we Google it, you'll find a lot of ANC leaders confirming the ANC members within has been corrupt. Many have said that.
Yes.
ANC members. That is why Kgalema Motlanthe, for example, a while back said maybe we should lose one election because
I am not refuting that history, Ashraf.
Mm-hmm.
I'm agreeing with that history because even the commission, the Zondo Commission, brought out many of those things. And you see, while other people are so worried about the MK, we are just worried about the name, not about the people. The majority of those people are the ones whom Tante was talking about. They went out and they are still going out. But we are waiting for 71%.
71. Please give me a call on... so I got that. Thanks for that call, JJ. 71. Give me a call on maybe the 1st of June, okay? We'll get the results. We need to have a conversation. I must make a note of it, right? Anonymous. Hello, Anonymous.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah,
thank you for taking my call.
Right, pleasure. Right, go ahead. What's your point?
I'm calling you from Cape Town. Look, call me disgruntled, call me disappointed or with mixed feelings, but I think I have the inalienable right not to vote. I've been voting actively since the beginning of since 30 years ago, but for the past two elections, I've actually gone and spoiled my vote. In fact, I won't have even bothered to vote this time. And in fact, yesterday when I spoke to family members, colleagues, and friends of ours on Mother's Day, I was actually surprised that many of them share my view. But I'm not representing them here. I just say for myself, what am I doing when I'm voting? Right? I feel very sorry. In fact, I suspect that I may be wrong, but I feel very sorry for those who actually had to die for this cause. People jailed and incarcerated in the past. The problem is just we vote to entrench democracy, right? Sorry?
Yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Yeah. But the problem is, if you look at the lunatics, the circus that's going on in Parliament, our recent first citizen, Thabo Mbeki, is on record having said that we are ruled and governed by a bunch of criminals. I don't need Thabo Mbeki to tell me what to think as an adult. But I think if you look at how people are sleeping in Parliament, how they dancing and disrupting ridiculous points of order, no progress, yet up.
Okay, but Anonymous, can I interject you because I'm worried about time, right? You virtually giving me, not virtually, in my opinion, you're giving me every reason why you should vote. And I'm not telling you who you should vote for.
No.
But you're giving me a reason why you should vote, because you need to change the status quo if you're so disgruntled with the status quo.
I do not try to change the status quo. What about coalition governments and so on? It's going to happen in any case.
Yeah.
So my vote is likely to go the wrong way. So what I'm trying to say is none of these parties have this X factor that you've been talking about. Sorry, I'm a bit short there because I ran over. None of these parties have that X factor for me. Okay. Absolutely none of them.
All right.
In fact, my pulse is now, as I sit here, in atrial fibrillation, which of course predisposes one to get a stroke. The problem is this. You see, we have made absolutely no progress in 30 years of democracy.
Okay.
And I think that the action to vote is more sinister because I actively, as an adult citizen, knowing what I'm voting for, these incompetent, lunatic circus is actually more sinister than not voting.
Okay, I can tell you now, if you stood for election, Anonymous, many people may just vote for you. I'm just telling you. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. There we are. The voice that says I have the right not to vote. Does he have a point? I mean, obviously being disgruntled, disillusioned, I get all of that. But the question is, I've always voted, and I absolutely intend to vote this time around. I will find a party, as I've often said today in particular, vote for a party that you love, first choice. Second one, you don't love them, but you buy into their vision for this election only, so you don't sign up more than 5 years. Third one is, if you don't find anybody, then be strategic about what effect can your strategic vote tactically contribute to the changing face of South Africa for now. Those are the factors to consider. But does Anonymous have a point that not voting is even strategically better than the other evil, which is voting? We'll get to an update on the issues around the tragic issues really last week of what happened in that building collapsing in George right after this.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 107 FM in Kroonstad.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
By the way, we always start the show with what I call That's My Point, and you can listen to it. I'll post it just now, tonight. So watch out for that one, and you can get it on the live streaming as well, right? Well, a week is a very, very long time. Because last week, this time, there were people living. Now they've died. A building has collapsed. Dreams shattered. Hopes dead. Everything. Disillusionment with regard to that building in George. Let's get an update in terms of where we are, because as you know, if the first issue was just about retrieval and in fact saving lives, that story has now moved on considerably. Sagri Chetty is the SABC News reporter who's been covering that beat. Sagri, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good evening, Ashraf, to you and the listeners.
Thank you. Right. So perhaps let's start with the fundamentals first. How many rescued alive, how many dead, how many unclaimed for now?
Well, at the moment, we've heard that the death toll is actually 27, and sadly it is expected to climb. But good news this weekend, something totally unexpected. People calling it a miracle. Someone who was pulled out alive after almost 6 days. So there's been highs and lows. After that dramatic rescue, that survivor, a few other bodies that were found at the scene, and that, of course, was the low. Ashraf, I must tell you, you were talking about 1 week, going forward. Yes, 1 week indeed, and today at exactly 9 minutes past 2, the site came to a standstill, actually, where a minute of silence was observed for those people that perished in this tragic accident. All the workers that were on site, just stood in a line and bowed their heads and just prayed. So it was quite a solemn occasion.
Yeah, I can just, I can't imagine because we're not there. You have a better sense of it, but, we always pray that we never are victims of these type of sheer tragedies, isn't it, right? Now, what has happened regarding the one big issue, which is like what has caused this building to collapse quicker than a pack of cards in the first place?
Well, I've actually just come out of a press briefing with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sihle Zikalala. He was accompanied by the Deputy Minister of International Relations, Alvin Boertes, and they led a delegation of almost about 50 people. And this delegation was made up of some consulate representatives from Malawi and Zimbabwe, and of course some entities, that are associated with the Department of Public Works. I'm talking about the Engineering Council of South Africa and the Construction Industry Development Board. So all these experts came here today, and they went to the site, and a press briefing was held afterwards, where the minister, just said that these are the experts that are at the disposal, for the investigation. Now, that it is a crime scene right now. Yeah. The police are investigating. As soon as the police conclude the investigation, it will be handed over to the Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor is taking the lead on this. And the Minister of Public Works said that, he has all these people, all the entities, all the experts, they are there to also help with the investigation going forward.
Okay. And that could take a long while, isn't it?
Yes, we did ask him about the time frame, he did say that this could take, it could take a couple of months, there's a lot of people that they actually want to speak to, and that's the developer, the architect, the quantity surveyor, the contractor, people from the George municipality, the chief inspector, people from the Department of Labor. There's so many people involved, so it will take quite a while for them to investigate and, of course, get that report out eventually.
And what about the actual owners of the building? Have they been saying much?
Well, yesterday we had the Minister of Police, Becky Cele, who had come through, to the site, and he visited with families as well. And what he was saying is that his tax officials here in George had been in contact with quite a few people, and I'm talking about the owner of the property, developer, contractor, subcontractor, and they were having a problem with them, getting back to them regarding their queries. Another interesting thing that Minister said was that these people involved had not yet gone to the families and acknowledged their loss or offered any kind of support to them.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Just lastly, what about the families? Any promised support, if not from the owners, from local government, national government?
Well, initially there were a lot of NGOs there, volunteers, people coming to council. I mean, I was there yesterday, and every day actually, church organizations coming through. But on the government side, they've got the Department of Social Development that have got their people there that are offering support. So as much as they've got their support, we've been there, we've heard the wails, the woman wailing, we've seen the tears. It is actually a very tragic situation. Yeah. They don't know what to do.
I can just imagine. Let's leave it at that, and hopefully they will know what to do sometime soon. Segri Chetty, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. That's Segri Chetty, SABC News reporter, covering the story of the collapsed George building. Just time to play out some of the many. Well, we can't take all the callers, unfortunately. I did say it's a bit of a job managing it all in time, but there's some WhatsApps I can take.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and SFM listeners. How many politicians have been killed, assassinated? How many business people in South Africa have been killed? How many women, students, women at universities who has been killed? So people must not come on the radio sometimes without facts and prove their allegations, because crime rate in South Africa is high. It has got nothing to do with porous borders. What does porous borders have to do with these killings that are happening every day? People must prove their facts. I listen to news every day, and the names of the criminals, most of them who are apprehended, are South African criminals. Thanks, James in Johannesburg.
Thank you for that, right? By the way, talking about crime, let's just see, here's another one. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Anonymous from Ladysmith. Out of all the rallies that I have heard, I'll be the first-time voter. So the political party that said something that is mouthful is Action SA. So big up to Action SA, but I haven't started to decide whether I'll vote for them. But a big up to them.
Okay, so that you made a start in a sense that it could be Action SA. Well, of course, many people have their own opinions about it. Now, you know the show. We, of course, broadcast on different frequencies nationwide, but also live streaming both on the X Twitter platform and on Facebook and on YouTube, and audio live streaming. Just go to sfm.co.za, you'll find it. And then we post a lot of the podcasts on our X, Twitter, and Facebook platform. So check them all out. And we look forward to connecting with you as always tomorrow. As far as the team is concerned, let me say thank you to all of them. That's Tumi Kamogelo and then Keys together with Fusani and Temba Dlamini. Which just leaves me time to tell you this much, right? As far as you're concerned, what do you think? What's the national pulse rate right now? Think about that. It's 6 o'clock. Time for the news with Greg House.